What if the path to profound sleep began with embracing discomfort, not avoiding it? For the next 3 hours, immerse yourself in Stoic exercises that gently train your mind to navigate stress and emerge more resilient. This isn't just about sleep. It's about forging an inner fortress even as you drift off. Negative visualization at dawn. At dawn, the world feels fragile. The sky is still unsure of its colors. The streets are hushed, and every breath feels like a borrowed gift. This is the moment to practice negative visualization, not to invite sorrow, but to sharpen the edges of gratitude. Imagine, for a moment, that this is the last dawn you will ever see. The last time the air feels this crisp. The last time the light slips in like this, pale and hesitant. The thought is not meant to crush you. It's meant to wake you up in a way that coffee never can. We move through life as if days are infinite, as if each sunrise has already promised the next. But nothing in the fabric of existence offers that guarantee. Every single person you love, every tree you pass, every song you hear is on a timer you cannot see. When you close your eyes and picture their absence, not to wallow, but to acknowledge, you begin to feel the texture of this morning in a way you might have missed. The warmth of the cup in your hand, the weight of your breath, the way the light touches the wall in your room as though it's choosing it for the first and last time. This practice comes from the ancient Stoics, who understood that contemplating loss isn't morbid, it's liberating. Seneca wrote about rehearsing misfortune, not because he wanted to suffer twice, but because it loosened fear's grip. If you imagine losing something and then open your eyes to find it still there, you experience its value anew. Think of a friend you haven't called in months. Imagine the phone ringing, but no one answers. Imagine scrolling through old photos knowing you will never take a new one. Feel that ache, and then let it push you to call them today, to hear their voice while it's still possible. In modern life, we avoid these thoughts. We drown them in noise, scrolling, watching, running from one obligation to the next, because looking at fragility feels dangerous. But the truth is, avoiding it makes us numb. It lulls us into treating the miraculous as ordinary. If you think of the sunrise as endless, you won't notice its subtle shifts. If you believe every conversation can be postponed, you'll talk without urgency, without depth. And then one day, the conversation you meant to have will be impossible. Imagine you're walking to work. Every face you pass could vanish tomorrow. The barista who knows your order. The neighbor who waves but never speaks. The stranger whose eyes meet yours for just a moment before they're gone forever. Negative visualization doesn't turn the world darker. It turns it brighter, sharper, more precious. It makes you realize that this exact combination of people, sounds, smells, and light will never happen again. Consider the dawn itself. Imagine waking tomorrow in a place where there's no sunrise, only an unchanging sky. The lack of progression, of transformation, would hollow you out. The beauty of morning is that it passes. You have to catch it. You have to be there for it. Negative visualization forces you into that presence. It's a reminder that beauty's fuel is its impermanence. There's a deeper shift that happens when you make this a daily practice. At first, it feels heavy, like you're weighing yourself down with grim possibilities. But over time, you notice the opposite. A quiet peace settles in, because nothing can be truly taken from you if you've already acknowledged its fragility. You stop clinging so hard. You stop assuming life owes you anything. And in that release, you find space for joy to expand. Think of the person you love most. Now, in your mind, let them go. Watch the room without them. Feel the silence. It hurts, but then picture them walking back in, smiling, breathing, speaking your name. Feel the wave of relief, of astonishment, that they are still here. That's the point. You can live in that astonishment every day. You can meet people as if they have just been returned to you from the edge of disappearance. This morning, when the sky is still soft and undecided, give yourself a moment to imagine it gone. Imagine this is your last chance to hear the birds, to taste the air, to feel the coolness on your skin before the sun climbs higher. Then, open your eyes fully. Let the colors be sharper, the sounds clearer, the air sweeter, because you know it's not promised. Live the day as if you were walking through something you cannot keep, because you are. And that's what makes it worth holding while you can. The inner Citadel check-in. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the noise of the day dissolve until all that remains is the steady rhythm of your breath. Now ask yourself, quietly, without rush, what if taken from me cannot harm me? The question feels simple, almost like a passing thought. But it's not. It's a key, a test, a check-in with the fortress of your own mind. The Stoics called it the inner Citadel, the part of you that remains untouched by the storms outside. The walls you build here are not of stone or steel, but of understanding, of clarity, of choosing where your power truly begins and ends. This is not about denying loss or pretending you feel no pain. It's about drawing a map of your vulnerabilities and marking the places where your enemies, or life itself, cannot touch you. For most of us, we build our identities out of things that can be taken. Our job, our reputation, our possessions, our relationships. We tell ourselves, if I lose this, I lose myself. But if your self is made of fragile things, then you've already surrendered before the siege has begun. Think of someone who has faced ruin but walked out unbroken. Not untouched, but unbroken. A soldier returning without his rank or uniform, but keeping his dignity. A prisoner stripped of freedom, but not of his mind. A betrayed friend who keeps their compassion intact. What remained? What cannot be stolen? That is the ground you're looking for, the bedrock of the inner Citadel. Imagine a kingdom under attack. The outer walls fall, the streets burn, but deep within, there is a final keep, a fortress so secure that even if the enemy reaches it, there is nothing inside they can use against you. This keep holds your judgment, your integrity, your choice in how to respond. If you know exactly what resides there, and you keep it pure, then no matter what collapses outside, you remain standing. When you pause to ask the question, what, if taken from me, cannot harm me, you begin to see the difference between what is yours by possession and what is yours by nature. Wealth can be stolen. Health can fade. People can leave. Even memories can be taken by time or illness. But your ability to meet what comes with courage, to act with justice, to think with clarity, that is yours until you hand it away. And the handing away is often voluntary, disguised as despair or resentment. Picture yourself in the worst moment you've lived through. The betrayal, the collapse, the loss. Now strip away everything in that moment until all that's left is the you that endured it. The you that decided, even without knowing it, to take the next breath. That self is not a fragile ornament to be displayed only in good times. It's the foundation. The more you live from that self, the less power the world has over you. This practice is not cold detachment. It's the opposite. It's fierce protection of what is most alive in you. If a cruel word cuts you, it's not because sound waves have physical claws. It's because it found a part of you that was built on others' approval. If rejection shatters you, it's because your worth was balanced on someone else's decision. The inner Citadel check-in is the moment you see those weak points and begin to rebuild, brick by brick, with something the world cannot take. It can start small. You lose an opportunity you wanted, and before you spiral, you ask, does losing this harm the part of me that thinks, chooses, loves? If the answer is no, then the pain is real but not ruinous. Or you're in the middle of an argument, your pride flaring, and you ask, if my pride is wounded, is my integrity wounded too? Sometimes the answer is yes, and you fight to protect it. Sometimes it's no, and you let the blow pass through without leaving a mark. The question is deceptively sharp. It slices through the tangled roots of fear and desire that keep you bound to fragile things. It doesn't mean you stop caring about what you love. It means you stop confusing what you love with what you are. You can grieve the loss of a friend without believing you've lost the ability to be a friend. You can lose your fortune without believing you've lost your ability to create. You can lose the stage and still hold your voice. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the middle of war and plague, reminded himself that people could insult him, cheat him, strip him of rank, and yet none of that could force him to think or act without reason and virtue. That was his citadel. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled for life, taught that if you guard your mind, you remain free even in chains. That was his Citadel. You will never meet these men, but the walls they built are not theirs alone. They are blueprints. The world will test you. It will shake the outer walls until the dust blinds you. It will threaten to take what you think you cannot live without. But the deeper truth is this. Only you can open the gates of the inner citadel. Only you can hand over your clarity, your courage, your sense of what is right. Every time you refuse to do so, the walls grow higher, not in isolation, but in resilience. So pause. Ask the question, not once, but as a habit. Let it echo in the quiet before decisions, in the silence after loss, in the breath before you speak. What, if taken from me, cannot harm me? Answer it with honesty, and the shape of your life will change. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you will no longer live as if your safety lies in things the world controls. And when the siege comes, as it always does, you will not be scrambling to build walls in panic. You will already be inside the citadel, watching the enemy exhaust themselves against walls they cannot breach, standing in the unshakable ground of who you are. Voluntary discomfort drill. Imagine waking up to a day stripped bare of its cushions. No warm showers, no soft meals, no indulgent pauses. The air feels colder than usual because you've chosen not to wear that comfortable sweater. Hunger starts whispering earlier than expected because breakfast is gone and lunch will be late. Your muscles ache because you've walked further than your usual distance, carrying more weight than you needed to. And all of it, every shiver, every pang, every drop of fatigue is on purpose. This is not punishment, it's practice. Most of our lives are constructed around the avoidance of discomfort. We set thermostats to the exact temperature we prefer. We stock kitchens with food that's easy to grab the moment we feel even a trace of hunger. We avoid walking when driving is faster, even if our bodies are quietly atrophying. It's an invisible luxury, one we forget to even notice, until it becomes an unbreakable habit. The voluntary discomfort drill is the deliberate act of breaking that habit. When you step willingly into discomfort, you're telling yourself a story that is the opposite of what modern life whispers in your ear. Life tells you, ease is the goal. Avoid anything unpleasant. The drill says, ease is optional. I can survive without it. I can thrive without it. The moment you make that shift, you start to notice the invisible chain that comfort wraps around you. Every day of your life is a negotiation with difficulty, traffic jams, sudden illness, job loss, heartbreak. But if you've never practiced difficulty on your own terms, the moment it arrives on its terms, you're defenseless. Think of a hiker who trains on flat, paved paths. They may feel strong, but when they encounter a steep, rocky climb, their body protests in shock. Now imagine someone who trains on rough trails, in rain and wind, with a heavy pack. When the real climb comes, they recognize the strain, not as an enemy, but as an old friend. Voluntary discomfort is the same principle applied to the soul. There are countless ways to run the drill. You can fast for a day, not for weight loss, not for a diet, but to remember what hunger feels like and that you can endure it. You can walk everywhere you need to go, even if it costs you hours, to remind yourself that fatigue is not fatal. You can take cold showers, sit in silence without entertainment, sleep on the floor instead of your bed. The point is not to romanticize suffering. It is to familiarize yourself with it, so it loses its power over you. In ancient times, philosophers like the Stoics would deliberately wear coarse clothing or eat the simplest food, not because they couldn't afford better, but because they wanted to prove to themselves they could live without it. Seneca wrote about eating plain bread and drinking water for days at a time, asking himself, is this what I feared? What he discovered, and what you will discover, is that much of what we think we cannot live without is merely habit, not necessity. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you do this. Comfort often makes us fragile without our realizing it. The slightest inconvenience becomes unbearable because our baseline expectation is constant ease. By lowering that baseline, by making your body and mind familiar with discomfort, You stop reacting to every hardship like it's an emergency. A cold wind becomes just wind. Hunger becomes just hunger. A sleepless night becomes a passing phase, not a catastrophe. And something unexpected happens. Gratitude sharpens. The first warm meal after a fast tastes like a feast. A soft bed after sleeping on the floor feels like a palace. Even the smallest comforts return to being luxuries instead of background noise. You remember what it means to appreciate. In a world where everything is available instantly, gratitude is not born from abundance. It's born from absence. But let's be clear, voluntary discomfort is not a call to self-destruction. You're not trying to harm yourself. You're trying to stretch your capacity. You're building a reserve of strength you can draw on when life tests you without warning. If you can sit calmly in a room with nothing to distract you, hunger in your stomach, a chill in the air, you are practicing for the moments when those things are not choices. And when they come, you will not crumble. You will remember that you've been here before. In a way, the drill is an antidote to fear. Fear often hides behind the question, what if I have to face this? Voluntary discomfort answers it. I already have. The day you willingly face cold, hunger, or fatigue, you remove the mystery from them. They lose the sharp edge of the unknown. You become the kind of person who has met the worst in small doses and lived through it. That is a kind of armor no material comfort can buy. So tomorrow, or even today, take something away from yourself. Remove the cushion, the heating, the easy meal. Walk further. Sleep less. Skip the entertainment. And when the voice in your head protests, when it says, why are you doing this to yourself? Answer with the truth. Because one day, I might not have a choice. And when that day comes, I want to be ready. That readiness, built one deliberate discomfort at a time, becomes part of you. It's not about loving hardship. It's about fearing it less. It's about walking through life knowing that comfort is sweet, but it is not necessary. You're stronger than ease. You always have been. Obstacle reframing ritual. Picture the moment you hit a wall. It could be anything. A rejection email that slams the door on your plans, a sudden expense that derails your savings, a conversation that turns cold when you needed warmth. You feel the resistance immediately. It stops your momentum, cuts into your confidence. The instinct is to push harder or to turn away entirely. Most people either try to smash the wall down in frustration or retreat in defeat. But there's a third option, one so often overlooked that it feels almost unnatural at first. You stop. You look. You ask, is this really a wall? Or is it a path I didn't notice before? Obstacles disguise themselves as endings. That's their first illusion. They show up with the weight of finality, as if the message is this far and no farther. But history is full of people who treated those moments not as conclusions, but as pivots. A failed business becomes the seed for a new one in a different field. A canceled opportunity forces someone to develop a skill they would have ignored. A personal loss shifts someone's perspective until their priorities align with what actually matters. The wall wasn't the end. It was the frame for a doorway they wouldn't have built otherwise. Consider the example of a mountaineer faced with a sheer cliff that blocks the route they've been following for hours. From their perspective, the climb is over. The cliff is too steep, too high, too dangerous. But when they pause, not to curse the cliff, but to study it, they notice a narrow ledge twisting around the side. That ledge, invisible from a distance, leads to an entirely new path. The obstacle didn't move. The wall didn't shrink. What changed was the way they looked at it. Curiosity turned a barrier into a guide. This is the essence of the obstacle reframing ritual, refusing to take an obstacle's first story as the final truth. It's the discipline of holding your frustration back just long enough to see the obstacle from a new angle. Curiosity is not passive here. It's an active dismantling of panic and assumption. It's asking not why me, but what is this showing me? And where else can I go from here? It's recognizing that some walls exist not to block you, but to redirect you toward terrain you never would have crossed otherwise. Every obstacle carries a hidden map. You may not see it right away. Your mind, still reeling from the hit, will want to cling to the idea that you've been stopped. But if you resist the urge to label it too soon, the map begins to appear. The rejected manuscript becomes the opportunity to self-publish and reach readers directly. The job you didn't get forces you to launch your own project, one that fits you better than any employer's description ever could. The relationship that ended frees you to explore parts of yourself you've been ignoring. The block was never just a block. It was an arrow pointing somewhere else. Of course, not every obstacle hides a clear path. Some are brutal, senseless, without silver linings in sight. In those moments, reframing is not about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let pain be the only thing that exists. Even when the path is invisible, you can ask the question, if there is something here for me to find, what might it be? This keeps the door to possibility slightly open, even in the storm. Sometimes the path doesn't reveal itself until much later, but curiosity plants the seed that will grow toward it. There's a quiet power in this approach. When you meet an obstacle with curiosity, you shift from being a victim of circumstance to an investigator of opportunity. You're no longer pounding on the wall, demanding it to move. You're studying it, listening for what it's hiding. That shift alone changes your posture, your breathing, your mind's flexibility. Obstacles that once looked like verdicts become questions. And questions, unlike verdicts, invite movement. The next time you face resistance, imagine it not as a monolith, but as a curtain. On the other side could be a side street, a hidden staircase, a completely different landscape. The only way to know is to approach with interest instead of fear. This doesn't guarantee you'll always find a better route, but it guarantees you won't miss it when it's there. Obstacles will never stop appearing. Life is built to test the limits of your movement. But each time you meet one with this ritual, pause, look, question, you train yourself to see beyond the first impression. And over time, the walls you meet stop feeling like prisons. They become puzzles. They become thresholds. They become the quiet hand on your shoulder, turning you toward a road you never knew existed. Because sometimes the wall in front of you is real, but sometimes it's just a doorway wearing a clever disguise. And you only find out which it is when you dare to look closer. The view from above. Imagine your mind lifting like a slow balloon from the ground of your daily life. At first, you're only a few feet above the pavement, still close enough to hear the traffic, feel the pull of gravity, and sense the sharp edges of every problem pressing against you. Your bills, your arguments, your regrets. Each one still loud, still heavy. But as you rise higher, you begin to notice how small they look from here. The fight you had with a friend becomes just a brief flicker on a street corner. That deadline you've been losing sleep over is no longer the whole horizon. It's just a thin strip of paper on the desk of your life. Keep rising. From 100 feet, you can see your neighborhood like a model village. The patterns of streets and houses reveal themselves, each filled with countless lives, each carrying their own storms. Your problem is still there, but so are thousands of others. You're not the only one carrying weight. And in that realization, there's a strange release. The heaviness is no longer yours alone to bear. Now, rise higher still. From an airplane's height, the city becomes a collection of lights, roads, and shadows. You can't even make out your house anymore, let alone the specific room where your fears have been pacing. The scale has shifted again. What felt massive from the ground now barely registers as a dot. And you start to wonder, if distance can shrink the size of my worries this much, what happens if I go farther? So you keep zooming out, past the clouds, past the line where blue fades into black. You're in orbit now. The planet turns silently beneath you, wrapped in its thin veil of atmosphere. Here, your entire city is no more than a cluster of lights. Your life, a single flicker among billions, is invisible. The argument, the missed opportunity, the small humiliations, they're not even specks. From here you see mountains, oceans, continents, storms swirling overseas. This is the stage your life has always been on, even when you were too close to see it. Go farther still, past the moon, past the reach of radio signals, into the emptiness where Earth itself is only a pale blue suspended in black. From here, there are no borders. No mine or yours. The things that keep you awake at night are smaller than dust, smaller than memory. And yet, your heart is still beating. You're still here. You still matter, but in a way that is no longer tied to the weight of your immediate troubles. Now, stretch your view not just in space, but in time. Let your perspective travel through centuries, millennia, eons. Picture the flow of history as a vast river. Empires rising and falling. Languages being born and dying. Stars igniting and collapsing. One day, even the sun will dim. Against that sweep, what could possibly remain heavy? What moment of embarrassment? What single failure could survive the gravity of eternity? This is not about pretending your pain doesn't exist. It's about loosening its grip by seeing it in proportion. The view from above isn't meant to erase the details of your life. It's meant to give them context. When you zoom out far enough, you see that every joy, every sorrow is part of a far greater landscape. The point is not to dismiss your struggle, but to realize it is not the totality of your existence. You can return from this height at any moment, descending back into your street, your home, your body. But you carry the memory of that view with you. And when the next problem rises like a wall in front of you, you will remember, from orbit, from eternity, it's just a ripple. You have been higher than this. You've seen farther. You know the scale. Because once you've looked down from that distance, once you've felt the quiet of space and the endlessness of time, your problems can still touch you, but they cannot bury you. They are weather passing over a planet that keeps turning. And you are the one who has learned how to rise above the clouds, into the stillness where everything is small enough to breathe again. This is your escape hatch from the prison of immediacy. This is the telescope you keep in your mind. Use it. Step back. Rise up. See it all, from orbit, from eternity, and ask yourself, what remains heavy now? Misfortune pre-mortem. At the edge of morning, before the day has even begun to stretch its limbs, you can run the entire film of your life forward. Not to bask in victory, but to watch it collapse. Picture the moments you've planned. Meetings, conversations, errands, small pleasures. And imagine each one fraying at the edges. The traffic that makes you late. The message that never comes. The friend who cancels. The unexpected bill that swallows your savings. See it all clearly and without flinching. This is the misfortune pre-mortem, an act of stepping into the wreckage of your own day before it has happened. So when the wreckage arrives, you are not surprised. You're already standing. We like to armor ourselves with hope. We assume things will run on schedule, that people will say what they promised, that the world will honor our plans. But the world has never signed such a contract. The misfortune pre-mortem is not pessimism. It's inoculation. It's walking into the storm knowing you may be drenched, but deciding to keep walking anyway. When you imagine the worst, not as a nightmare, but as rehearsal, you discover that you can survive it in your mind first. And once you've survived it there, the real thing can't shake you as deeply. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Marcus Aurelius wrote about waking up each day knowing you would meet the ungrateful, the deceitful, the arrogant, the careless. Not because he wanted to live in suspicion, but because he wanted to be free from the sting of shock. If you expect the world to be anything other than unpredictable, you will bleed twice. Once when your illusion shatters, and again when the blow lands. Think about the smallest inconvenience you've ever let ruin your day. A coffee spilled, a battery dead, a stranger's rudeness replayed in your head for hours. In the moment, it felt like a betrayal because you assumed the day owed you smoothness. Now imagine beginning the day assuming the coffee will spill, the battery will die, the stranger will scowl. If they do, you nod, unshaken. If they don't, you walk lighter, grateful for the reprieve. The misfortune pre-mortem is not about inviting chaos. It's about removing its power to control you. It's about letting go of the fantasy that control ever existed. We can influence our days, but we cannot script them. The call will drop. The rain will fall. The news will arrive when you least want it. But if you've already pictured yourself breathing through it, still moving, still living, then when it happens, you don't flail, you respond. Imagine this morning. The train is late. You miss your meeting. You lose a client. You come home to a sink full of dishes and a house that feels too small for your frustration. In your mind, you've already lived this. You've already felt the sting and exhaled it. So in reality, you pick up a plate. You wash it. You make tea. You watch the steam rise, and you remember. The day was never mine to control, only mine to navigate. Do this enough, and something strange happens. You start to meet misfortune like an old acquaintance. Not welcome, but familiar. You nod at it. You adjust your course. You don't waste hours raging at the rain. You open an umbrella. And the days where nothing goes wrong, those feel like stolen treasure, like sunlight breaking where you expected storm. This is the paradox of the misfortune pre-mortem. By rehearsing disaster, you make room for joy. You strip away the fragile hope that the world will be gentle and replace it with the unshakable knowledge that you can be. And that, more than anything, makes you ready for anything. The ego silencing statement, I am not special. I am no more entitled to praise than to silence. And that is strength. The first time you say it, something inside you resists. A voice rises up to defend you. No, I am different. I am worthy of being seen. I am owed recognition for my effort, my talent, my suffering. And of course, that voice feels honest. Because since childhood, you've been fed the idea that to matter is to be exceptional, that your existence needs to be validated by applause, that your worth is measured in how brightly you stand out. But what if that's a cage disguised as a crown? The ego clings to specialness like a lifeline. It convinces you that without it, you dissolve into nothing. That if you're not exceptional, you are invisible. That if people are not praising you, something is wrong. And because you believe it, you live like a prisoner of approval, breathing deeply only when the world hands you permission slips in the form of compliments, attention, or admiration. But there's a hidden cost. Every moment you crave praise is a moment you are owned by it. Every time you feel entitled to being noticed, you are building your happiness on something you cannot control. And when it's gone, and it always goes, your sense of self collapses. Silence becomes a threat, not a neutral fact. You can't just exist. You have to be applauded for existing. Now, imagine the opposite. Imagine living in such a way that praise is pleasant, but not necessary. That silence is not a wound, but simply the natural air of life. Imagine doing your work, offering your love, giving your effort, not for the echo of clapping hands, but because the act itself is enough. That's the power of the ego silencing statement. It's not an insult to yourself. It's not self-erasure. It's a recalibration. It's the moment you say, my worth is not a performance. My value does not depend on being higher than others, brighter than others, louder than others. I am allowed to simply be, and because I am allowed to simply be, I am unshakable. Think of the painter who never sells a canvas, but wakes up every morning eager to paint. The teacher who teaches with passion in a forgotten rural classroom, never mentioned in the news. The parent who raises a child with love, without needing anyone's validation for it. These lives are not small. They are vast because they are lived without being held hostage by other people's acknowledgement. The irony is, when you stop needing to be special, you become free to do remarkable things. Not because you want to be seen, but because you can focus entirely on the doing itself. You stop hesitating out of fear of not being recognized. You stop watering down your truth to please an audience. You stop letting your identity be dictated by the attention economy. And when silence comes, and it will come, it no longer feels like death. You begin to see that silence has a strange beauty. It's where your ego is stripped of its decorations. It's where you learn to stand without leaning on applause. It's where your work and your being become one and the same. When you say, I am not special, you are not lowering yourself. You are removing yourself from the toxic game of comparison. You are refusing the bargain that says, if you give me brilliance, I'll give you love. You are refusing to measure your humanity against the volume of applause it receives. And here's the unexpected twist. When you no longer demand to be special, you can finally see others clearly. You can appreciate their efforts without feeling threatened. You can celebrate their wins without seeing them as your loss. You can listen without waiting for your turn to shine. That is not weakness. That is a kind of strength most people will never taste. The ego-silencing statement is not a sentence. It's a practice. You repeat it not to crush your self-esteem, but to free it from dependence. To remind yourself, in the middle of both praise and silence, that neither changes the core of who you are. That core is steady. That core is whole. That core does not need to be special to be worth protecting. So try it. Not once, but over and over, until the words stop stinging and start feeling like air. I am not special. I am no more entitled to praise than to silence. And that is strength. Say it until you believe it. Say it until you live it. Say it until the applause and the silence sound exactly the same in the fortress of your mind. The controlled reaction drill. Imagine someone looks at you and says, "You always overcomplicate things." Before they even finish, something in you stirs. Your chest tightens. Your mind rushes to assemble proof that they're wrong. Your tongue wants to leap into defense. But today you do something different. You pause. You feel the instinct, but you don't follow it. This is the controlled reaction drill. It begins in the gap between stimulus and response. That gap is small, almost invisible. Most people never notice it. They hear the words, feel the sting, and react on autopilot. But you slow it down. You take one steady breath. Inhale, exhale. The world doesn't know you're doing it, but inside, you've claimed a fraction of a second as yours. In that space, you observe. Where is the feeling in your body? Jaw, stomach, shoulders? What story is your mind shouting? That you're being attacked? That you're being misunderstood? This isn't about suppressing the feeling. It's about seeing it clearly before it takes the wheel. Next, you shift from instinct to choice. Instead of firing back, you gather information. What makes you say that? Can you give me an example? Your tone is calm, not cold. You're not trying to trap them. You're anchoring yourself in curiosity. Criticism often comes mixed, some truth, some distortion. Your job is to separate the two without losing yourself in the noise. Sometimes the feedback will be valid. If it is, acknowledge it without self-attack. You're right, my last report was late. I'll change my process next time. Sometimes it's exaggerated or unfounded. Then you draw a clear line. I hear your frustration. I'm open to solutions, not personal attacks. Either way, you've stayed in control of your delivery. This drill isn't about being passive. It's about command. You are deciding when and how to respond, instead of letting the moment decide for you. That decision changes everything. A tense meeting doesn't spiral. An argument doesn't scorch the relationship. Even online insults lose their grip. You read them, decide if there's any signal in the static, and either respond with intention or delete and move on. The truth is, most of us learned young that criticism equals danger, loss of approval, punishment, shame. That wiring stays with us. The controlled reaction drill rewrites it. Criticism stops being a trigger for panic and becomes data. Sometimes wrong data, sometimes useful data, but never a verdict on your worth. You can practice it in small ways. Let a friend tease you and simply smile. Receive a correction at work and thank the person before you respond. Ask for clarification before offering your side. The more you do it, the shorter the gap between trigger and calm becomes. Your nervous system learns. I am safe. I can choose. I am not owned by my reflexes. And here's the reward. Criticism no longer knocks you off balance. You stop fearing it. You stop overreacting to it. You meet it the way a seasoned sailor meets rough water, not with panic, but with practiced hands on the wheel. So the next time someone says, "You weren't listening," or "This isn't good enough," let the first wave pass. Breathe. Name what you feel. Ask for specifics. Decide what's true, what's false, and what matters. Then speak on your own terms. Because the real victory isn't in winning the argument. It's in proving to yourself that no one else's words can control the way you respond. The graveyard walk. Picture yourself stepping through an old wrought iron gate, its hinges crying out in protest, as if reluctant to let you in. The air is different here. Not just colder, but heavier, layered with the slow settling of years. You walk along narrow gravel paths that wind between rows of weathered stones, their edges softened by moss and time. The inscriptions are faded, letters surrendering to erosion, names once sharp, now blurring into anonymity. It's not morbid, at least not entirely. It's quiet. It's honest. And in this stillness, you realize something most of us spend our lives avoiding. Everything ends. The graveyard walk is not about fascination with death, but about dissolving the illusions that inflate our fears. Our daily anxieties thrive on a false sense of permanence. We think the embarrassing moment at work will haunt us forever, that the argument we had will define us, that every failure is a scar written in stone. But here, among the actual stones, you see the truth. Names that once stirred strong feelings, love, anger, pride, envy, are now unreadable to strangers. The heartbreaks that seemed unendurable in their time have already been swallowed by soil and sky. Every high, every low, every restless night, all of it is faded in the same way the dates here have. You pause before one marker. It belonged to someone who lived a century ago, born in a year you've only seen in history books. They had friends, enemies, dreams, fears, all gone. Whatever kept them awake at night, the unpaid debts, the broken promises, the whispers behind their back, no longer exists. What they left behind is a stone, a few lines of chiseled memory, and the echo of having been alive. This is not tragedy. This is release. Your mind resists at first. It wants to say, but my life is different. My worries are real. My struggles matter more. But they don't. Not in the way you think. The graveyard does not diminish your life. It enlarges it. Because when you understand that nothing you cling to will hold forever, not your possessions, not your grudges, not even your own body, you begin to loosen your grip. That meeting tomorrow, it will not matter. That criticism you received, it will not last. The person you're afraid will judge you. They too will fade, just as you will, just as I will. And so, walking here becomes an unspoken meditation. Each name is a mirror, reflecting the inevitability you've tried to ignore. And each mirror whispers the same message. Let go. Let go of the weight you drag from one day to the next. Let go of the perfectionism, the bitterness, the self-judgment. If you were standing here 100 years from now, looking at your own name, you'd wish you had set them down earlier. Think of the arguments that have hollowed out your days. The ones where you rehearse every comeback in your mind, years after the moment has passed. Imagine carrying them to your final day. Will they feel worth the time you spent on them? Or will they look like shadows you could have walked around? Think of the worries you cradle like precious glass, convinced they deserve your protection. Will they be worth the nights you traded away? Or will they be just another faint scratch in the stone, unreadable to anyone who comes after? A graveyard is the great leveler. Here, no one's title matters. No one's follower count matters. The wealthy merchant lies beside the penniless laborer. The one who is loved by many rests beside the one who is barely known. What remains is not the scale of their success, but the simple fact that they were here at all. And if all things, even the tallest monuments, fade, then so can the small fears that stalk you through your days. You keep walking. The wind moves through brittle leaves, sounding like the turning of 1,000 paper pages. You feel something shifting inside, not fear, but a calm acceptance. You are reminded that life is not a thing to clutch, but to live, to inhabit fully without trying to freeze it in place. And when the days come that are harder to bear, you can remember this walk. You can remember that no feeling is eternal, no pain permanent, no mistake unchangeable. In this way, the graveyard does not speak of endings, but of freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of the moment. Freedom from the illusion that you must hold on to everything, fix everything, be everything. You won't. You can't. And that's the point. So the next time your anxieties crowd in, whispering that you must hurry, that you must be perfect, that the world will remember your failures, picture this place. Picture the quiet stones, the wind, the names worn soft. Walk there in your mind, if not in reality. Let each step remind you that you, too, will fade, and in that fading, you will be free. For nothing that binds you now will bind you then. And in knowing this, you can live lighter. You can live now. This is the gift of the graveyard walk. Not the reminder that life is short, but that it is spacious enough to hold your joy without your fear. And that the only thing you ever truly lose is the chance to live it while you can. Ownership audit. Strip your life down to the bone. Lay it out on the table, every possession, every title, every relationship, every bit of recognition you've ever chased. Imagine touching each one with the question, do I truly own this? Your house. It can be taken in a fire, a foreclosure, a single bad turn of luck. Your job? One meeting, one restructuring, one email could erase it. Your bank account? Numbers in a system you do not control. Even your body, your strength, your health, your beauty can be taken without warning. If ownership means absolute control, then what remains? Look harder. Strip away the illusions of possession. Friends, family, partners, can you own them? No. They are bound by their own will, their own choices, their own lives. They can walk away, change, disappear. The harder you try to possess them, the more you reveal you never truly could. Reputation? That rests in the mouths and minds of others. One rumor, one misunderstood moment, and it shifts like sand underfoot. And what about time itself? You can't own a single second. Every moment slips from your grasp the instant it arrives. If all of that can be taken, then what can't? What is beyond theft, beyond fire, beyond decay? Your judgments, your choices, your will. These are yours in a way no one can touch. A tyrant can chain your body, but not your judgment of what is right. Poverty can strip you bare, but not your choice to face it with dignity or despair. Illness can weaken your muscles, but not your will to endure. Every other possession in life is rented from chance, but your inner world is signed in your own hand. This audit is not meant to leave you feeling poor. It is meant to show you where true wealth lies. Consider the story of a man in prison, wrongfully accused. The walls are closing in, his name is ruined, his future stolen. Yet each day, he chooses to wake and read, to speak kindly to the guards, to refuse bitterness. Stripped of everything, he remains rich in the only currency that matters, the power to decide the quality of his own soul. The world can take much, but it cannot reach into that vault unless you open it for them. Most people live as if their worth is a balance sheet of possessions and praise. But when you understand that all of that is borrowed, you start to live differently. You stop clutching at things that are not truly yours. You start investing in the only assets that endure: clarity of thought, integrity of action, resilience of will. You realize that to give up your peace of mind for the sake of keeping an external thing is to trade a diamond for dust. Imagine a storm tearing through your life. Loss, betrayal, disaster. What survives? Not the walls of your house, not the approval of the crowd, not the plans you made. What survives is whether you meet it with courage or collapse, with wisdom or folly. That choice, that instant of inner decision, is yours in a way no one can own or alter without your consent. It is the last frontier of sovereignty, the last kingdom over which you are absolute ruler. So audit your life with ruthless honesty. Name what you can truly own. It is not the car in your driveway or the name on your mailbox. It is not the admiration in someone's eyes or the comfort of your current routine. What you own is the lens through which you see the world, the compass that guides your actions, and the fire that drives your will. These are the treasures no thief can steal, no fortune can buy, and no fate can take. Guard them. Refine them. They're the only inheritance you carry from one season of life to the next. And perhaps, if the soul endures, beyond even that. Everything else is passing scenery. And the sooner you see that, the lighter you travel, the freer you become. Because when you stop calling the temporary mine, you stop fearing its loss. And when you stop fearing its loss, you finally begin to live. Expectation deconstruction practice. Expectation is a quiet architect. It builds invisible scaffolding around your day before it even begins, outlining how things should go. You expect the coffee shop to have your order right. You expect your messages to be answered. You expect the train to run on time, the weather to stay dry, your plans to unfold without friction. And when reality steps in, as it always does, and knocks the scaffolding down, it's not just the event that hurts. It's the betrayal of what you thought you were owed. Expectation deconstruction practice is about taking that scaffolding down yourself before the day has the chance. It begins with a simple act. Pick one thing you expect today and strip it away in your mind. Not because you want it to fail, but because you want to be free from the trap of needing it to succeed. If you expect a friend to text back, imagine they won't. If you expect the day to be easy, imagine it will be jagged. If you expect gratitude for your effort, imagine silence instead. Sit with that reality, not as punishment, but as liberation. We are rarely conscious of how many unspoken contracts we write with the world. If I'm kind, they'll appreciate me. If I work hard, they'll notice. If I speak, they'll listen. We live inside these unacknowledged deals, and when they're broken, we feel cheated, forgetting that the other party never signed. To walk through the day assuming nothing is owed to you is not self-pity. It's a dismantling of the illusion that the universe keeps score. Imagine walking into a room where you expect warmth, and instead you're met with indifference. If you came in expecting affection, the cold feels like an injury. If you came in expecting nothing, the indifference is simply the room being the room. And any kindness you receive is pure surplus, a gift without debt. This is the heart of the practice, to see every small good thing as extra, and every absence of it as neutral, not a theft. In relationships, this shift is transformative. When you expect nothing in return for your care, you stop keeping invisible ledgers. You stop tallying who called last, who gave more, who owes who. You give because giving itself feels right, and when something comes back to you, it's a surprise, not a settlement. The weight of resentment begins to dissolve because there is no contract to break. In work, expectation deconstruction frees you from the poison of entitlement. Yes, you can and should strive for fairness, but the daily grind of waiting for recognition, for the thank you that never comes, corrodes you from the inside. Assume that today, your effort will be unseen. Do the work anyway. When acknowledgement comes, it will feel like sunlight, unexpected and warm, rather than overdue and dim. Try this tomorrow. Before you step out of bed, remove 3 expectations. No expectation that the commute will be smooth. No expectation that your mood will stay steady. No expectation that others will make space for you. Then move through the day as if each moment is untethered from script. The relief comes slowly at first, then sharply. You are no longer negotiating with reality. You are meeting it. This practice doesn't shrink joy. It amplifies it. When nothing is guaranteed, everything becomes worthy of notice. The stranger who holds the door. The rain that pauses just long enough for you to cross the street. The rare moment someone really listens. Each one becomes a treasure because you weren't leaning on its arrival. Expectation deconstruction is not cynicism. It's the opposite. It's stepping into the day without armor made of assumptions, letting life surprise you instead of disappoint you. It's the quiet, steady stance of someone who knows the world owes them nothing, and yet still finds wonder in everything it offers. The nothing owed meditation. Close your eyes. Breathe in slowly until the air feels like it fills every corner of you. Let out, and with it, let go of the quiet demand you didn't even know you were carrying. The expectation that the world should be gentle with you, should notice you, should explain itself to you. This is the first step into the nothing owed meditation, a space where you release the invisible contract you've been holding over life. The truth is simple, but cuts deep. No one owes you kindness, validation, or explanation. And yet, we live as if they do. We tell ourselves, after everything I've done for them, they should care for me in return. If I give my best, I deserve recognition. If I'm hurt, I'm entitled to a clear answer why. But what happens when those debts go unpaid? We become bitter. Resentment rots in us like stagnant water. We replay the moments, the slights, the silences, feeding on them like proof that we've been wronged. The nothing owed meditation is not an invitation to become cold or detached. It is an invitation to drop the chains that bind your peace to other people's choices. It is a decision to stand in a world that does not have to be fair and still choose to be whole. When you release the expectation that kindness is owed, every act of it becomes a gift. When you stop believing validation is your right, every word of encouragement becomes precious. When you accept that no one owes you an explanation, you stop clawing at closed doors for answers that will never come. Picture someone who hurt you without warning. Maybe they walked away. Maybe they spoke words you'll never forget. Your mind demands why. You tell yourself that if they gave you a reason, you could move on. But deep down you know that even the clearest explanation won't heal the wound. It will only feed your craving for control over what you cannot control. Letting go of the demand for an explanation isn't weakness. It's an act of self-protection. It's the moment you say, "Your silence will not dictate the rhythm of my life." Or think of a time you gave everything to someone, a friend, a partner, a family member, and they did not return your effort in equal measure. Your heart kept a ledger, and now it's in the red. The nothing owed meditation is the moment you set fire to the ledger. You stop keeping score. You give because giving is who you are, not because you're waiting for the balance to even out. This doesn't mean letting people exploit you. It means not letting your love be poisoned by expectation. When you truly live as if nothing is owed, gratitude becomes sharper. You no longer see kindness as payment. It becomes a miracle. The smallest gesture, the quietest support, the simplest word of comfort feels radiant because you are not counting on it to arrive. And when it doesn't arrive, your foundation remains unshaken because you never build it on other people's guarantees. This meditation is not a single moment. It's a constant practice. It's catching yourself when the mind says they should have and replacing it with they chose not to and I am still here. It's watching the ego protest because the ego hates to let go of what it thinks it deserves and answering with a calm, "You were never promised it." Every morning, sit with this truth. Today, the world owes me nothing. People may be kind, or they may not. They may see me, or they may not. They may explain their choices, or leave me in silence. None of it changes my capacity to act with clarity, to love without keeping score, to walk forward without the weight of invisible debts on my back. When you can live that way, you are untouchable. Not because life can't hurt you, it will, but because you will no longer confuse the actions of others with the measure of your own worth. And in that space, you will find a strange, quiet power. The kind that does not need to demand, does not need to plead, does not need to keep accounts. The kind that simply stands, breathing in the vastness of a world that owes you nothing, and realizing that somehow you are still full. Accepting fate without resentment. Imagine waking up and deciding, before the day even begins, that whatever happens, you will meet it without bitterness. Not because you are numb, not because you've given up, but because you've chosen a different way to face the world. You will not spend your energy wrestling the unchangeable. You will practice the art of saying quietly and completely yes. It sounds simple, almost passive, until you try it. You miss your train. The rain starts just as you step outside without an umbrella. Someone speaks to you in a tone that makes your chest tighten. Normally, each of these moments would pull you into protest, maybe out loud, maybe only in your mind. Why now? This always happens to me. They had no right. But today, you take a breath and accept. You don't rush to label it as unfair. You let it be what it is. Acceptance isn't about liking what happens. It's not the same as approval. You can accept a storm without pretending to enjoy being soaked. You can accept a loss without pretending it doesn't hurt. What you're doing is removing the extra layer of resistance that turns pain into suffering. The sting of the moment is sharp enough. You don't add the weight of resentment on top of it. Think of a river hitting a rock. The water doesn't curse the stone, doesn't demand it move. It curves around, continuing on its way. That is acceptance, not defeat, but flow. It keeps your strength for where it can actually matter. Resentment, on the other hand, is like trying to push the rock out of the riverbed with your bare hands. You waste yourself on something that will never move. There is a discipline here, and it starts with awareness. When something unwanted arrives, the first reaction will still rise: anger, annoyance, disappointment. The drill is to notice that surge without feeding it. You name it. I'm irritated. You breathe. You remind yourself, this is what's happening now. That reminder is not fatalistic. It's grounding. You can't steer if you're denying the sea you're on. In the course of one day, there will be dozens of tiny tests. A slow line at the store, a canceled meeting, a friend who doesn't reply. Each one is a chance to practice. You don't have to force a smile or pretend nothing matters. You simply decide not to carry the weight any longer than you must. You accept it, adjust, and keep moving. Even with bigger events, loss, betrayal, change you never wanted, the principle holds. Acceptance does not mean the absence of grief. You can cry without cursing the fact that tears are needed. You can feel the pain while still saying, yes, this is part of my life now. That yes is not surrender to hopelessness. It is surrender to reality, which is the only place you can begin to heal. The paradox is this: when you stop resenting what is, you free your energy to shape what can be. Resentment freezes you in place, replaying the scene again and again. Acceptance moves you forward, even if each step is small. It turns your gaze from the closed door to the space where the next one might open. This doesn't make you weak. It makes you unshakable. People will notice. They'll see that you don't flinch as much when life swerves. That your calm is not the calm of someone untouched by hardship, but of someone who has met it and kept their center. And inside, you'll feel it too. The difference between a life spent arguing with reality and a life spent engaging with it. So today, when the moment comes, and it will practice, breathe. Say yes to the thing you cannot change. Let go of the story that it shouldn't be this way. Accept without bitterness. You'll find that the world feels lighter, not because it has changed, but because you are no longer dragging every stone with you. Cold water clarity ritual. The water starts warm, the way you've trained yourself to expect it. Comfort flows over your skin, muscles loosen, breath slows. You let your mind wander in the steam, drift between thoughts, sink into the familiar cocoon of heat. But you know this is only the beginning. The real ritual has yet to start. In a moment, you will turn the handle and strip all comfort away. Your hand hovers for a second, because even when you've done this before, there's still that hesitation. The body already knows what's coming, and it doesn't want it. The instinct is primal. Avoid the cold, seek warmth, preserve comfort. But this ritual is not about instinct, it's about mastery. And so you turn. The change is instant. Warmth vanishes. The water bites, sharp and unforgiving. Your skin flinches, your chest locks, and your breath shatters into short bursts. Every nerve fires like it's under attack, every part of you screaming for escape. This is the first threshold, the body's desperate protest. And you stay. You let the shock wash through you, over you, into you. The world shrinks to this one sensation, this one moment. There is no room in your mind for regret or distraction or the echo of yesterday's problems. The cold is absolute. And in that absolute, there is a strange purity. At first, the mind fights like the body. It shouts in panic thoughts, get out, stop, enough. But slowly something shifts. You begin to realize you're not the cold, and the cold is not you. You are the observer, standing in its presence. You start to control the breath. Deep inhale, long exhale. The chaos softens. The water is still ice, but the panic is gone. This is the second threshold, where shock becomes stillness. And in that stillness, clarity appears. It is not the vague, daydream clarity of a warm morning shower. It's the razor-edged clarity that comes from confrontation. The cold strips away the background noise of your thoughts. There's no space for overthinking, no energy for doubt. Your awareness is sharp, clean, direct. This is the moment you understand why you do this. This ritual is more than a test of endurance. It's a daily reminder of who is in control. Not your reflexes, not your cravings, not the part of you that chooses comfort over growth. You choose to stay. You choose to be present in the uncomfortable. And that choice follows you out of the shower and into the rest of the day. When you face a difficult conversation, you will remember, I have stood in the cold and found my breath. When you're confronted with unexpected setbacks, you will remember, I have been here before in a place my body told me to leave, and I stayed. When your mind is scattered, you will remember, I know how to cut through noise to find focus. The cold is a teacher unlike any other. It doesn't care about your mood, your excuses, or your plans. It arrives with the same message every time. Face me. And when you do, it rewards you. Not with comfort, but with strength. Not with warmth, but with clarity. As the seconds pass, you realize the cold has not weakened you. It has revealed you. You are still standing. The fear was louder than the reality. And in that realization, you find power. When you finally step away, water dripping from your skin, the air feels different. Your body hums with life. Your lungs drink in oxygen like it's the first breath of the day. You feel charged, sharpened, untouchable. The ritual is complete, but its echo will carry through every moment that follows. Because the cold water clarity ritual is not about cold showers. It's about rewriting your relationship with discomfort. It's about teaching your mind that fear is a signal, not a stop sign. That the things you resist may be the very things that forge you. And that you have the power to stand in the storm until it becomes still. Shock becomes stillness. Discomfort becomes focus. And you, unchanged in essence, but transformed in will, step back into the world knowing you have already met the hardest moment of the day, and you did not flinch. Practicing delay of desire. Imagine a moment when the craving hits. It's not subtle. It floods in bright and urgent, pulling your attention away from everything else. It might be the smell of food drifting from another room, a notification lighting up your phone, the itch to make a purchase, the sudden impulse to check who's watching, who's listening, who's approving. Your body and mind align in one message. Now, desire is clever. It rarely comes asking politely. It demands, disguising itself as necessity. It convinces you that the moment before fulfillment is a kind of suffering, that you will feel incomplete until you obey. But if you pause, if you breathe, and just watch that urgency, you'll notice something strange. The wave doesn't grow forever. It swells, peaks, and if ignored, begins to fall. The hunger isn't permanent. The need to check isn't eternal. Even longing has an expiration date. Practicing delay of desire is not about punishment. It's about reclaiming authority over your own impulses. Every time you act on a craving the instant it appears, you reinforce a loop. Want, act, repeat. That loop is efficient, but it makes you fragile. You become a puppet whose strings are pulled by the smallest flicker of wanting. But when you practice delay, you stretch the space between the spark of the want and the act of satisfying it. In that space, you discover choice. At first, it's uncomfortable. You might set the fork down and wait 2 minutes before taking a bite. You might see the message appear on your phone and choose to finish the page you're reading first. You might feel the rush of anger and decide to wait before sending that reply. Each time you delay, you prove, subtly, quietly, that the desire doesn't own you. And this is where the transformation begins. Over time, you realize that the delay does something profound. It sharpens the moment when you finally choose to indulge. Food tastes richer because it's not swallowed in a blur. The message you send is calmer, more precise, less tangled in heat of the moment emotion. You start to notice which desires fade when not fed immediately, and you learn which ones are worth acting on at all. Consider the impulse to seek validation. The quick check for likes, comments, attention. It feels like quenching a thirst. But when you delay, even for a short while, you often find the thirst was not for approval at all, but for connection, for purpose, for meaning. And those deeper needs can't be fed by quick bursts of attention. They need something slower, more deliberate. Desire is not your enemy. It's part of being alive. But when you let it dictate every move, you live in reaction, not creation. You chase, you grab, you consume, but you never steer. Practicing delay doesn't remove desire. It lets you meet it on your terms. It's the difference between being swept downstream and choosing where to step into the water. And here's the quiet truth. When you master the delay, you start to master yourself. You become the kind of person who can feel hunger and still think clearly, who can feel provoked and still choose patience, who can feel the pull of pleasure and still decide whether to follow. You're no longer just someone who wants, you're someone who chooses. Because in that small pause between wanting and having, you are free. And the longer you can hold it, the more your life belongs to you, not to the endless parade of things demanding your yes. Selective speech exercise. At first light, when the house is quiet and the sky is undecided, practice saying less. The exercise is simple to describe and difficult to do. Speak only what is necessary. Refrain from opinion unless asked. Watch your ego react like a hand pulled from a warm fire. Necessary words are those that clarify, protect, or enable action. Nothing ornamental, nothing for display. Everything else can dissolve back into breath. This is not about becoming small. It is about becoming precise. Words are tools that leave marks, and most days we swing them like hammers when tweezers would do. The mind loves the sensation of being heard, but it mistakes volume for value. When you deliberately withhold what is unnecessary, you begin to feel the true weight of a sentence, the way a single phrase can steady a person or knock a room off balance. You also meet the part of you that believes attention is oxygen. Watch that part without obeying it. Picture a morning meeting. You prepared a comment that repeats what has already been said in slightly shinier language. Ask 4 quiet questions before you speak. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Was it asked for? If any answer is no, keep your voice sheathed. Continue listening. Beneath the loudest arguments, there is often an unnamed fear or a missing fact. When someone invites your view, answer plainly and stop. People remember clarity more than cleverness. At home, the exercise is more demanding because the stakes feel personal. A relative tosses a familiar hook across the table. You know the script. You counter. They escalate. The evening curdles. Refuse the choreography. Set a boundary with as few words as possible. I don't want to discuss that. Or ask one crisp question. What outcome are you hoping for? Then pause. The pause is not retreat. It is a refusal to feed a fire that starves without fuel. Selective speech does not mean silence forever. It means speaking only what changes something real. There is danger on the other edge. Saying less can be a disguise for avoiding discomfort. Selective speech is not selective cowardice. When honesty is required to prevent damage, speak with a straight spine and a short sentence. The measure is motive. Are you protecting dignity or protecting your image? One cleans the air, the other perfumes it. Sugar words soothe and then crash. Medicine words can sting, but they heal. The practice is learning which is which. Use a small method. Before you answer, take a single breath and run a quick inventory. What is my motive? Service or self-display? What is the minimum number of words that would still be complete? Can I remove performance and keep the core? Deliver only what survives that scan. It will feel awkward at first, like learning a new instrument. Later, the music grows cleaner. Rooms get quieter. People stop talking in circles because you have removed the sliver of ego that keeps speech spinning. Practice in small arenas. With a cashier, answer what is asked and add a sincere thank you. No apologetic monologue about your day. In a group chat, reply with a sentence that moves the thread forward. Skip the flourishment to prove you are witty. In a disagreement, state your view once, ask for theirs, and stop. Feel the wave inside you that demands one more justification. Let crest and pass. You're training yourself to withstand the discomfort of being unadorned. Listening becomes different, too. When you aren't loading your next line, you hear signal beneath noise, the complaint that is really a request, the brag that is really a bruise, the silence that is really a fear. Then your few words can land exactly where they are needed. Do you want help or a witness? What part felt most difficult? Would it help if I take this task? Precision replaces performance. Try a brief morning ritual. For 1 hour, speak only by necessity. Greet, thank, ask for what you truly need, answer direct questions. Keep a small notebook and write the sentences you withheld. In the evening, read them. How many were designed to impress, to jab, to defend, to rescue your image from imagined judgment? Circle the few that were truly useful. Those become scripts you can keep. The rest becomes compost, raw material for awareness instead of noise. Selective speech tightens apology. Resist the sprawling narrative that centers your feelings. Use the minimal frame. I'm sorry for X. It was wrong because Y. I will do Z to repair it. Stop there. The point is repair, not redemption. The fewer words you spend defending yourself, the more credibility the apology carries. There is tenderness in restraint. With someone you love, you do not need to fill the air with proof. Brew tea. Sit close. Say, I'm here. If more is asked, give more. If not, let the quiet carry both of you. Love that does not require constant declaration tends to be steadier because it trusts its own presence. You will fail sometimes. You will give a speech where a sentence would have done. You will send a message you regret. When the heat rises, resist the urge to repair with another flood of words. Repair only what is broken. Say, I said more than I needed. Here is the short version. Then stop. The muscle grows when used and when rested. Humility keeps the practice from becoming pride about being the quietest person in the room. At night, don't count how many times you spoke. Count how many times your words stayed true after you trimmed them. Did they lower confusion? Did they protect dignity? Yours and others? Did they move something important from stuck to open? That is the arithmetic of selective speech. Fewer sentences, greater weight. Less display, more depth. Over time, your voice becomes a sign of signal, not static. People lean in when you speak because you've trained them to expect substance. Tomorrow, try again. Speak what is necessary. Refrain from opinion unless asked. Watch your ego's discomfort the way you watch, whether through a window, present, dramatic, but unable to rearrange the furniture. When the storm clears, offer the one sentence that matters, and let the rest return to silence. The evening's self-judgment. When the day is done and the noise has drained away, you are left alone with the echo of your own choices. This is the moment most people avoid. They numb it with a screen, drown it in distraction, or smother it under the weight of sleep. But if you have the courage, you can step into it. You can stand in front of yourself. Not the version you want others to see, not the version you defend with excuses, but the raw, unedited you. And you can ask, how did I live today? The evening self-judgment is not a ritual of self-punishment. It is not a nightly court where you play both judge and executioner. It is an honest inventory, stripped of vanity and stripped of cruelty. You do not flatter yourself into comfort. You do not tear yourself into shreds. You simply see, and in seeing, you learn. Start by separating actions from emotions. Emotions are weather. They move through you whether you invite them or not. Anger can arrive without your consent. Fear can walk in unannounced. Joy can flood a moment without warning. To judge yourself for feeling them is like blaming the sky for raining. But actions, those are yours. They are the footprints you leave in the soil of the day. That's where the judgment belongs. Maybe you felt angry today. That is not a failure. But did you let that anger turn into cruelty? That is the question. Maybe you felt fear. That is not weakness. But did you let fear dictate your choices? That is the question. By placing your focus here, you strip away the shame of being human and put the light on the part of you that can change, the part that chooses. And when you find something worth praising, praise the effort, not the outcome. This is where the ego likes to play its trick. If the result was good, it tells you that you succeeded because you're good. If the result was bad, it tells you that you failed because you are flawed. Both lies keep you trapped in outcome worship. But outcomes are fickle. They bend under luck, timing, and countless forces beyond your control. Effort, on the other hand, is fully yours. Maybe you spoke up in a meeting and your idea was ignored. The effort to speak, that is victory. Maybe you tried them into friendship and the other person turned away. The effort to reach, that is worth praise. When you praise effort, you stop living like a gambler at the mercy of a roulette wheel. You start living like a craftsman who knows the value is in the making, not the applause. The evening self-judgment is sharp but fair. When you see an action you regret, you don't spiral into self-hate. You extract the lesson and carry it forward. If you snapped at someone you love, you acknowledge it without excuses, and you decide how you will face that moment differently next time. If you avoided something important out of fear, you admit it without hiding, and you set a plan to take one step toward it tomorrow. Over time, this practice builds a strange kind of calm. You no longer need to wait for others to evaluate you. You're doing the work yourself, every day, with more honesty than the world could offer. And because your judgment is balanced, you stop fearing it. You don't need to hide from yourself, because you have learned that you are both capable of error and worthy of growth. Think of it like tending a garden at dusk. You walk the rows and notice what is thriving and what is withering. You don't scream at the plants for drooping. You don't throw away the ones that didn't bloom today. You know what needs more water, what needs more light, and you return tomorrow to give it. The evening self-judgment is the tending of your own growth. At first, it will be uncomfortable. You'll want to either defend yourself with flattery or destroy yourself with blame. Resist both. Flattery sedates the will to improve. Blame poisons the soil of change. Stay in the middle path, clear-eyed, steady-handed, unafraid to see what is true. And here is the deeper truth. If you can meet yourself this way at night, you will move through your days differently. You will act with more intention, knowing you will face those actions later. You will speak with more care, knowing your own voice will echo back to you in the quiet hours. You will live with more courage because you will see clearly that the worst judgment is not failure. It's refusing to try. When you close your eyes at the end of the day, imagine placing all your actions on a table. The kind words you spoke, the hard work you did, the moments you avoided out of fear, the times you slipped into pettiness. You look at each one. You keep the good as fuel. You take the bad as lessons. And when you rise the next morning, you are lighter. Not because the day was perfect, but because you faced it with honesty. This is the power of the evening self-judgment. To see without distortion. To praise without inflating. To correct without condemning. To meet yourself each night with the kind of truth that makes tomorrow worth walking into. Embrace of temporary identity. Imagine stepping into a room where no one knows your name, your title, or the story you've been telling the world. You are not introduced. There's no resume, no credentials, no applause for past victories. In that space, you're just a presence. No labels, no expectations. This is the embrace of temporary identity, a deliberate act of wearing a role without letting your ego cling to it. We spend so much of life building and protecting an identity. The business card, the bio, the list of achievements slipped into conversations like passwords. And when we're recognized for them, we feel grounded, validated. But this dependence on recognition is a trap. It ties your sense of worth to whether the world notices you. The moment it doesn't, you feel invisible. The drill is about breaking that link, learning to move, speak, and act with the same energy whether you are celebrated or unseen. So you take on a role anonymously. Maybe you help organize an event without your name in the credits. Maybe you join a community project where no one knows your experience, and you keep it that way. You contribute ideas without attaching them to your reputation. You watch how your ego twitches, wanting to say, "I've done this before," or "I'm actually an expert." You notice the itch to prove yourself, and you let it pass. It's not about pretending to be less than you are. It's about discovering who you are when no one is watching. Without the armor of recognition, you meet the raw shape of your abilities, your patience, your generosity. You find out if you still give your best when there's no applause coming. That is the purest measure of discipline, effort unpowered by vanity. In this drill, humility becomes active, not ornamental. You're not humble because you downplay your skills. You're humble because you don't need anyone to acknowledge them. You begin to understand the difference between doing something to be seen and doing something because it matters to you. And in that space, your work becomes cleaner, your focus sharper. There will be moments of discomfort. Your ego will whisper that you're being overlooked, that you're wasting your value. You'll feel the urge to step forward and claim credit, to remind everyone who you are. That's when you breathe, let the urge rise and fall, and remind yourself, my worth is not on loan from their recognition. It exists, with or without witnesses. When you practice this, something unexpected happens. You become harder to manipulate. Flattery loses its hook. Insults lose their sting. If your sense of self doesn't depend on constant recognition, no one can buy or break you with it. You carry your identity lightly, able to put it down when needed, able to take on new roles without fear of losing yourself. And when you return to spaces where you are known, you carry a new steadiness. Praise feels pleasant, but not essential. Criticism feels informative, but not devastating. You've seen what it's like to exist without the scaffolding of name and title, and you've learned that you are still whole. So find a way, this week, to step into a role invisibly. Help without signature. Lead without title. Create without an audience. Let the ego feel the quiet, and let it survive there. Because when you can do that, you become free, not from your identity, but from the need to cling to it. And that freedom will follow you everywhere, no matter who knows your name. The Anonymous Kindness Act. There's a kind of kindness that asks for no applause, no acknowledgement, no echo of gratitude. It happens quietly, unseen, like a seed dropped into the soil in the middle of the night. No one watches it fall. No one marks the spot. But in time, something grows, and the world is better without ever knowing who to thank. This is the Anonymous Kindness Act. Not the grand gesture that makes headlines, not the performative charity posted on social media, but the invisible choice to do good when no one is looking. In a world obsessed with credit, this is rebellion. It's the refusal to turn kindness into currency. It's the decision to let virtue stand on its own, unmeasured, unrewarded, untraceable except to your own conscience. Imagine walking down a quiet street on a cold evening. You pass a stranger's porch and notice a package left in the rain. You could keep walking. After all, it's not yours. But instead, you lift it, carry it to the shelter of their door, and leave without knocking. No one will know. No one will write your name in a post about the kind neighbor. But you'll walk away lighter because the act was pure, untouched by the fingerprints of pride. Or picture slipping an envelope of grocery vouchers under the door of a struggling family. No return address. No note. Just the means to breathe a little easier for a week. They will wonder who did it. They may never know. That not knowing is part of the gift. It shifts the focus from you to the relief itself. You've removed yourself from the story so that the kindness can be the story. The world often teaches us to attach identity to every good deed. We're encouraged to be seen, to be recognized, to have proof that we were the helper. But the moment you seek acknowledgement, the act becomes about two things instead of one: the help and the recognition. Anonymous kindness is the stripping away of that second layer, so that only the help remains. There is a deep discipline in doing something generous and telling no one. Not your friends, not your partner, not even your future self in the form of a diary entry. The act vanishes into the stream of life like a drop of water. You give it away fully, not just the thing you offered, but the story of offering it. And in letting it go, you train yourself in the rare art of unselfish giving. The paradox is this: even though no one else sees, you still change. Every anonymous act you perform reshapes your character in ways you can't fake. You begin to value the doing over the display. You start to recognize how much of what we call kindness is tangled up in ego. And in untangling it, you uncover something sharper, cleaner, and infinitely more enduring. Think of the ancient stories of those who gave under the cover of darkness, leaving food at doorsteps before the first light of dawn. Their names did not survive, but their deeds did, carried forward in the lives they touched, in the ripple effects of generosity passed on. That is the truest form of legacy, not the memory of your name, but the continuation of your impact. Anonymous kindness is not about denying yourself joy. In fact, there is a quiet joy in it unlike any other, a joy unpolluted by expectation, by the hope of being thanked, by the vanity of being admired. It's the joy of knowing that goodness happened, and that was enough. That someone somewhere is warmer, safer, freer because you chose to act. The practice is simple but demanding. It requires you to silence the part of you that craves credit, to outweat the urge to leave a trace. It requires you to let go of the story in which you are the hero, and instead become the invisible force that makes the story possible. And with each act, you loosen the chains that bind kindness to ego, until giving becomes as natural and unself-conscious as breathing. So the next time you feel the urge to help, ask yourself, can I do this without being seen? Can I make the act so weightless that it doesn't even carry my name? Can I leave it behind like a secret gift to the world, content that the only witness to it is me? Because in that choice, you discover that virtue doesn't need an audience. It needs only to exist. And when you walk away, unseen, unthanked, unnamed, you carry with you something far greater than recognition. You carry the knowledge that in a small, invisible way, you shaped the world for the better. And that is the kind of treasure that no one can give you and no one can take away. The mirror of mortality. Stand before the mirror. At first, you see the familiar, the shape of your face, the lines that have deepened with time, the eyes that have looked out at every moment of your life. It's a surface you've glanced at thousands of times, usually in passing, usually without thinking. But this time, you do not look for flaws or improvements. You do not check your hair, your clothes, your posture. You look straight into your own gaze and let the thought settle. I will die. Not in the abstract way we usually acknowledge it, not as a philosophical idea to be filed away, but as an unavoidable physical certainty. One day, the eyes staring back at you will close and never open again. The breath moving in your chest will be gone. Your voice, your memories, your stories, everything you have ever carried will vanish from the living world. The mind recoils at this. It wants to rush away, to soften the truth with distractions, to think about something, anything else. But if you stay, if you keep looking, you begin to feel the weight of it in a different way. It's not just you. Everyone you love will also vanish. Every conversation, every touch, every shared glance is moving toward its final instance. The people whose voices are as familiar as your own heartbeat will one day be silent. This could make you colder. It could harden you against the inevitable, convincing you that if everything ends, nothing matters. Many live like this, building walls, keeping distance, turning away from attachment, as if avoiding love could protect them from loss. But the mirror of mortality can teach something far more powerful. The end is what makes the middle precious. The knowledge that everything will be taken sharpens the taste of what you have now. Think of the times you let small irritations overshadow the presence of someone you care about. The way you scrolled your phone instead of listening, the way you argued about things that now seem so small. If you had known in that moment that it was the last time you would see them, would you have spoken differently? Would you have looked longer? Would you have chosen gentleness over being right? When you hold mortality in view, patience grows naturally. The person who cuts you off in traffic, the stranger who speaks harshly, the friend who disappoints you, they are also on the same finite road. Their time is ticking away too. This doesn't excuse cruelty, but reminds you that everyone is carrying their own invisible countdown. And in that awareness, anger loses some of its urgency. The mirror shows you the truth no clock can hide. Every breath is borrowed. And knowing this changes how you see even the smallest details. The sunlight falling across the floor is no longer just light. It's a moment that will never come again. The way someone laughs today may never be heard in quite the same way tomorrow. A child's voice, a parent's advice, the warmth of a hand in yours. All of it is part of a fragile, unrepeatable sequence. But this awareness is not meant to drape life in grief. It is meant to make you more awake, more deliberate. You begin to choose your words more carefully, not because you are cautious, but because you know they may be your last to this person. You start to notice the pauses in conversation, the flicker of emotion in someone's eyes, the way silence itself can be a kind of connection. Facing the mirror like this is a kind of training. Each time you repeat the truth, "I will die, so will everyone I love," you strip away the illusions that make you careless. You stop postponing the kindness you think you'll offer later. You stop waiting for the perfect time to forgive. You stop assuming there will always be another chance. And in this stripping away, you find something unexpected, a deeper softness. You begin to treat others not as obstacles or background noise, but as fellow travelers on the same fragile path. You see their imperfections with more understanding, their mistakes with more context, their fears with more tenderness. You love more urgently, but also more calmly, without the grasping that comes from pretending love will last forever. Mortality is not a punishment. It is the frame that makes the picture complete. Without it, moments blur into an endless, shapeless stream. With it, moments glow with definition. The hug lasts longer. The laughter feels richer. Even the tears feel meaningful, because they belong to something that will not repeat. When you finally turn away from the mirror, the reflection doesn't vanish. It follows you into your days. You see it when someone holds the door for you, when a friend texts just to say they're thinking of you, when a stranger smiles without reason. Each is a thread in a fabric you know is temporary and therefore beyond price. And maybe, if you hold this awareness long enough, you'll reach a point where you don't need the mirror to remember. You'll live each day as though the glass is always in front of you, whispering the truth. You will die. So will everyone you love. And because of that, you will not waste your life in coldness. You will spend it in gentleness, in presence, in the kind of love that makes the leaving worth enduring. Voluntary poverty trial. Strip the day down until only the bones of living remain. No screens, no endless menus of choice, no polished conveniences to smooth every edge. Just a shirt, a pair of trousers, plain shoes. Just a bowl of food simple enough to name each ingredient without thinking. Just the tools your hands can carry, the water you can pour without power, the air that comes without a bill. This is the voluntary poverty trial. Not as punishment, not as protest, but as experiment. The first thing you will meet is habit. Your fingers will twitch for the phone. Your eyes will glance toward the clock you don't need to check. You will feel the pull toward the shelves, the refrigerator, the apps, the streams. These small impulses reveal the hooks that hold you, the invisible cords you didn't know were there until you try to move without them. That discomfort is the point. By choosing a day like this, you remove the scaffolding that props up your comfort, and you discover what remains. You might expect the absence of technology to feel like silence, but the first silence you meet is inside your own head when the constant feed of distraction stops flowing. Without the noise, the mind begins to notice things it's been trained to skim past. The scratch of fabric, the rhythm of your own breathing, the way light falls differently at each hour. Your hunger will arrive stripped of indulgence. Without the luxury of choice, a piece of bread becomes more than bread. It is relief, it is sustenance. Without sugar or spice to carry you past the point of need, you feel the sharp line where appetite ends. In this space, gratitude is not an emotion you summon. It is the automatic response to enough. The day will slow. Without devices to slice it into rapid segments, time returns to its heavier shape. You might find it unbearable at first, the way minutes stretch without notifications to punctuate them. But in the stretch, something loosens. A walk becomes an event. A conversation, uninterrupted by screens, deepens. You start to realize how much of your life's speed has been manufactured, and how easily you confuse pace with meaning. You may also meet a strange kind of relief. Without the pressure to choose between endless options, the decision to wear what you have, eat what you have, and use what you have becomes effortless. Decision fatigue dissolves. The day shapes itself without your constant editing. When sunset comes, you notice how much of life is self-illuminating. The laughter of someone you love, the stillness of a tree at the edge of your street, the simple act of drinking water and feeling it cool your throat. These things are undiminished by the absence of wealth, decoration, or luxury. In fact, without the glare of abundance, they stand out brighter, like stars revealed when city lights go out. The voluntary poverty trial does not ask you to romanticize deprivation. Real poverty is not a choice, and it carries a weight this practice can only imitate. But by choosing a day with bare essentials, you practice loosening your grip on excess. You see how much of your identity is tied to what you own, and how much more of you remains when those things are set aside. At night, as you lie down without the usual last scroll or the background hum of devices, you notice the quiet is not empty, it's full. Full of your own thoughts, your own breath, the memory of a day in which you carried less and somehow felt more. You understand now that when everything unnecessary is gone, what is essential has room to take its rightful place. And that place is not fragile. It does not depend on signal, on status, on stuff. It has been here all along, waiting for you to notice. Withholding the last word. When the air is tight with tension, when the heat of an argument swells in your chest, there's a point, a sharp, pulsing point, where you feel the urge to deliver the final blow. The last word. The closing shot that will seal your win and leave the other person with nothing left to say. Your mind lines it up like a weapon, polishing it with all the cleverness and righteousness you can muster. You imagine how it will land, how it will tilt the balance in your favor. And then you stop. You stop because you realize that winning in that moment is not about crushing the other side. It's about refusing the bait your ego is dangling in front of you. You stop because you know that every last word comes with a hidden cost. It keeps the conflict alive. It forces the other person to reload. It digs the trench deeper, even when you think you're filling it in. Withholding the last word is not surrender. It is the discipline to let the battle end without firing the final shot. It is the quiet decision to step back from the cliff edge instead of leaning into the fall. And make no mistake, it's harder than it sounds. Silence is not the absence of power here. It is the channeling of it. Arguments feed on oxygen. The last word is like opening a window in a burning room. It gives the fire more air. You may think you're extinguishing it by making your point, but you're only giving it new life. The embers glow hotter. The smoke thickens. Silence, on the other hand, stars the flames. It gives the other person nothing to push against, nothing to defend against. And in that vacuum, heat dies down. There's a subtle kind of victory in letting someone else have the last say, especially when you know it isn't the truth. Your silence doesn't mean you agree. It means you have chosen not to hand over control of your peace in exchange for a fleeting sense of triumph. You've decided that being right is less important than being free. Think of the times you've won an argument with the last word. Did it feel like a win for long? Or did the conversation keep replaying in your mind, each replay stirring the same irritation? Winning the last word rarely brings closure. It brings more weight. You carry the argument with you because your ego needs to check again and again if you really won. When you withhold it, you give yourself the gift of leaving the battlefield empty-handed and unchained. And there's another kind of power here, one the other person can feel. Silence after provocation is unsettling. It shows restraint. It says, without saying, you do not have the ability to pull me into endless combat. That's not arrogance, it's boundary. It's the refusal to make your inner state dependent on whether or not someone else yields. Withholding the last word is also a test of self-mastery. It forces you to sit with the discomfort of not defending yourself in the moment. It asks you to trust that truth doesn't vanish just because you didn't shout it at the end. It asks you to accept that not every wrong needs to be corrected in real time, and not every blow needs to be returned. This is not passivity, it's strategy. You're playing the long game. Peace over pride, clarity over chaos. So the next time you're standing there with your retort balanced on your tongue, picture yourself holding it like a stone. Feel its weight. Imagine throwing it. And imagine the ripples it will send into the rest of the conversation, the rest of your night, maybe even the rest of your relationship. Then imagine setting it down. Not because you can't throw it, but because you've decided not to. There's strength in having the power to wound and choosing not to use it. There's strength in knowing the argument could go on and refusing to feed it. And there's a quiet kind of dignity in walking away without slamming the door, without scratching your initials into the last line of the fight. Let them think they've won if they need to. Let them believe the last sound in the air belongs to them. You'll be long gone from the battlefield, carrying no scars, but the wisdom that silence, when chosen, is not emptiness, it's closure. And sometimes, closure is the greatest victory you can claim. Intentional misunderstanding drill. Someone takes your words the wrong way. You see the twist immediately. You know exactly which part they misunderstood, which tone they missed, which sentence they heard through the filter of their own fears or assumptions. Instantly, the instinct rises, explain, clarify, repair. You can almost feel the muscles in your face preparing to speak, the urge to pull their perception back into alignment with your truth. But today is different. Today you let it go. You don't correct them. You let the misunderstanding stand. This is the intentional misunderstanding drill. We spend so much of our lives trying to be understood, often without even realizing it. Every sentence, every action, every choice is followed by subtle maintenance, adjusting, defending, explaining, just to keep other people's image of us accurate. And yet, no matter how hard we try, that image is never truly ours to control. People hear through their own history. They see through the lens of their own beliefs. They can twist kindness into manipulation or turn a neutral statement into an insult. The more we fight these distortions, the more energy we give away. This drill teaches you to stop fighting when the fight does not serve you. Imagine you give a thoughtful suggestion in a meeting and someone responds with, "So you're saying we've been doing it wrong all along?" You could explain. You could soften your tone, backtrack, try to make them feel safe. Or you could simply pause, smile slightly, and let the moment pass without rescue. You do not let your worth hinge on whether they understood your intention. The conversation moves on, and so do you. It sounds simple, but it can feel almost unbearable at first. There is a sharp discomfort in being misread. For some, it triggers the fear of rejection. For others, it lights up the need to be in control. But the drill is not about pretending you don't care. It's about discovering that your identity is not on loan to anyone else's interpretation. You exist outside their version of you. When you let someone hold an incorrect view of you, you create a kind of space where you're not frantically managing their thoughts. That space can be deeply freeing. It allows you to conserve energy for the relationships and contexts where clarity actually matters. Not every misunderstanding deserves your correction. Some are harmless. Some are willful. Some are so tangled in the other person's narrative that no amount of explaining could unwind them. Letting go here is not neglect. It's wisdom. Consider the everyday examples. A friend assumes you cancel plans because you didn't want to see them, when really you were exhausted. You could send a long explanation, but you don't. You know the friendship is strong enough to survive this moment, and you trust that your pattern of care will speak louder over time. Or a stranger online takes your words out of context and assigns you an intention you never had. Instead of typing out paragraphs to prove them wrong, you close the tab and return to what matters. You leave them with their story, and you keep your peace. This drill also reveals something deeper, the way we tie our self-worth to agreement. We think, if they see me the way I see myself, then I'm safe. But safety built on agreement is fragile. It shatters every time someone misunderstands us. By practicing intentional misunderstanding, you build a different kind of safety, one that exists even when others are wrong about you. It doesn't mean you never clarify. There will be times when correction is necessary, when misunderstanding leads to harm, when it blocks essential work, when silence would violate your values. But what this drill builds is discernment. You begin to know the difference between moments that require your voice and moments that can be left to dissolve on their own. You'll notice something else over time. Your anxiety about perception fades. The constant monitoring of how you're seen starts to quiet. You become harder to provoke. You begin to act more from your values and less from a need to be approved of. In a strange way, allowing misunderstanding can make you more authentic, because you're no longer editing yourself to be perfectly understood. The The first few times, it might feel like surrender, like you've let someone win by getting you wrong. But then you realize there was no contest to begin with. You didn't lose anything. You simply refused to spend your life rearranging mirrors in other people's minds. You trusted that the truth of who you are doesn't vanish when it's misperceived. So the next time someone tilts your words, misreads your silence, or paints a version of you that feels unfamiliar, breathe. Notice the urge to leap in and repair. Then let it pass. Let them carry their version if they want to. Walk away knowing that the real you is not trapped inside their misunderstanding. You've stepped out of the game. You've kept your energy. And in doing so, you've proven something quietly powerful. You don't need everyone to get you for you to be whole. Silence amidst noise meditation. The world does not wait for you to be ready. It does not lower its volume so you can think. Life comes with the hum of traffic, the chatter of strangers, the shrill of alarms, the constant static of demands and distractions. If you wait for silence before you can be still, you may never be still at all. And so this practice begins not in a quiet room with dim light, but right here in the chaos. You could be on a crowded train, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, announcements crackling overhead. Or in an office where phones ring, keyboards clatter, and voices overlap in waves. Or at home, where dishes clink, televisions murmur from another room, and life keeps pressing in from all sides. The noise is not the enemy here, it is the teacher. You close your eyes, not to escape but to see. You let the sounds rush in, unfiltered. You don't label them as good or bad, pleasant or irritating. You notice their shapes, their textures, the way each one rises, peaks, and fades. The honk of a horn becomes a single burst in a larger rhythm. The distant argument in the street becomes part of the low hum of the city. You stop resisting and start listening. Your breath becomes the anchor, not because it silences the noise, but because it remains steady beneath it. Inhale, exhale. The noise is still there, but you're no longer being carried away by it. The mind begins to separate from a need for perfect conditions. You realize you can meet the noise without needing to mute it. This is the first shift, when you stop seeing noise as something that steals your peace and start seeing peace as something that does not depend on noise at all. Stillness becomes an inner posture, not an environmental privilege. It is something you carry, not something you wait for. The practice deepens. You feel the weight of your body where it sits or stands. You let your shoulders drop, your jaw unclench. The noise moves around you, through you, but does not enter the core of you. It's like standing in the middle of a river without being swept away, feet planted firmly in the current. In this place, you begin to notice that the noise is not continuous. It has gaps, pauses, small spaces where the sound falls away before the next wave arrives. You slip into those spaces without effort, just enough to taste the quiet between the noise. You realize that silence was never fully gone. It was simply buried under layers of sound. And if you can find it here, you can find it anywhere. Your mind learns something important. Peace is not the absence of disturbance. Peace is the ability to remain undisturbed within disturbance. It's the capacity to hold your center while the world spins and shouts around you. You stop longing for control over your surroundings and start building mastery over your response to them. This is more than meditation. It is resilience training. The next time you face a loud meeting, a busy street, a chaotic home, you will know that you do not need to fight the noise to keep your clarity. You have practiced holding stillness while the world moved. You have practiced being the calm point in the storm. When you finally open your eyes, the noise hasn't changed. The train still rattles. The voices still rise and fall. The horns still sound. But you have changed. The volume no longer dictates the state of your mind. You walk away with the quiet inside you, carrying it like an invisible shield into whatever comes next. Because once you've found silence in the midst of noise, you understand something rare. Peace is not fragile. It is unshakable. It does not require the world to soften. It only requires you to root yourself deeply enough that nothing can pull you out. And in a world that will never stop speaking, that is the kind of silence worth learning. Walk without destination. You step outside without a plan. There's no list of errands, no stopwatch running in the back of your mind, no endpoint waiting to reward you. The world, for once, is not a map you must navigate, but a living space you can drift through. You take the first step, and it feels almost wrong, like you should be headed somewhere, accomplishing something, crossing an invisible task off a day that demands proof of your usefulness. But this time, you walk without a destination. The streets are not routes. They are ribbons unfolding under your feet. The air feels different when it's not being cut by urgency. You notice the rhythm of your own breathing, the subtle give of the ground beneath you, the way the world seems to slow to match your pace. A breeze brushes past, and for a moment, that is enough. Our lives are built on goals, places to get to, things to achieve, outcomes to measure. Even our leisure often hides an agenda. Walk to burn calories, read to learn something, meditate to become calmer. Presence is treated like a side effect, not a reason. But when you walk without purpose, you're not moving to get somewhere. You're moving to be somewhere. Every corner, every crack in the pavement, every flicker of shadow and light is no longer something you pass on the way. It is the point. At first, the mind resists. It throws up suggestions. Maybe I'll stop at that shop. Maybe I'll loop back quickly and get back to work. It wants to turn the walk into a task because that's where it feels safe, inside a measurable reason. But if you keep going, ignoring the pull toward productivity, you'll notice the chatter fades. The walk becomes lighter, freer. You stop asking where you are and start noticing what is here. You hear the rustle of leaves, not as background noise, but as an unfolding conversation between tree and wind. You see the way sunlight glances off a window, scattering 1,000 shards of gold across the ground. You watch a bird pause mid-flight, wings flaring as it catches a hidden current. None of these things need you to witness them, yet each feels like a small gift, waiting for the moment you chose to slow down enough to receive it. The body understands presence before the mind does. It knows how to settle into rhythm, how to let sensation take the lead. Your feet find a pace that feels neither rushed nor idle. They simply carry you, steady and unhurried, as if they know that being in motion doesn't require a finish line. And with each step, something uncoils in your chest. You're not chasing or fleeing. You're not late or early. You're exactly where you are. In this kind of walking, time stops behaving the way you expect. Minutes no longer march forward. They drift, they dissolve. The idea of later grows faint, and the pressure of before softens. There's just the movement, the breath, the unfolding path. And the more you walk like this, the more you realize how much of life you've lived in transit, missing the thing you're already inside of. When you finally do stop, whether after 10 minutes or an hour, it doesn't feel like ending a trip. It feels like surfacing from water, bringing with you a quiet you didn't know you'd been missing. The world hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. The streets you pass through are the same ones that will take you to work, to errands, to obligations tomorrow. But now you've walked them without the armor of purpose, and they've shown you their other face, one that exists for no reason but to be experienced. Walking without destination is a way of saying to life, I'm not here just to arrive. I'm here to notice, to exist in the stretch between points, where nothing is demanded of me except to be awake to what's already around me. And sometimes that stretch is not the in-between, it's the heart of it all. Emotion naming challenge. Emotions arrive like weather, sometimes creeping in quietly, sometimes breaking over you in a sudden storm. Most of the time, we react before we even know their names. Anger turns into a sharp reply. Sadness becomes withdrawal. Anxiety dissolves into restless motion. The emotion naming challenge asks you to do something almost unnatural in this age of instant expression. Feel the emotion, name it with precision, and then stay still. No reaction, no immediate fix, no performance, just awareness, like holding a fragile bird without squeezing. To name an emotion precisely is to strip it of disguise. We are quick to use broad labels: mad, sad, stressed, But these words are blunt instruments. Real mastery begins when you dig under the surface and call it what it truly is: irritation, not rage; disappointment, not grief; apprehension, not panic. The more accurately you name it, the less it controls you, because you've transformed it from a shapeless cloud into a defined shape you can observe. Imagine you feel a heaviness in your chest after a friend cancels plans. Without awareness, that weight might twist into resentment or self-blame. But if you stop and name it, loneliness, you see the real source. Loneliness asks for connection, not confrontation. Now the choice is yours: to reach out to someone else, to sit with yourself, or simply to acknowledge the feeling without feeding it. The emotion still exists, but it no longer drives the wheel. This challenge is uncomfortable because it forces you to interrupt your reflexes. You might feel anger flare when a coworker interrupts you. Normally, the words would leap out, sharp, defensive. But if you pause and name it, frustration at being overlooked, you realize it's not about winning this moment's argument, but about wanting respect in the long term. In that pause, you can choose a response that builds the respect you want instead of burning it down. The sitting part is the hardest. Our bodies are built to act when emotions surge. Stillness feels like betrayal to that instinct. But when you sit without reacting, something subtle happens. The emotion shows you its true size. Some grow smaller the moment you stop wrestling them. Others deepen into something more complex. Anger melting into hurt. Anxiety revealing itself as excitement tangled with fear. This is how mastery begins, by seeing that what you first feel is often only the doorway to what you actually feel. There's a precision to emotional vocabulary that most of us never practice. I'm anxious can mean dozens of different states: unease, dread, anticipation, restlessness. I'm sad might mean grief, disappointment, rejection, or nostalgia. When you use the wrong word, your mind treats the emotion as something larger and vaguer than it really is. Naming precisely shrinks the territory you have to navigate. Try this in a small, safe moment. You're in traffic, someone cuts you off, and your pulse spikes. Instead of muttering an insult, stop. What is it? Annoyance? Fear at the near miss? Irritation at losing momentum? Each name calls for a different path forward. Annoyance may pass with a breath. Fear might need you to steady your hands. Irritation might fade once you remember you have nowhere urgent to be. Without the name, they all blend into one hot rush that demands reaction. The challenge is not to stop feeling. Emotions are signals, not enemies. The challenge is to stop being a puppet pulled by strings you never bother to see. Each time you name an emotion and sit with it, you loosen a string. You learn that you can experience discomfort without rushing to erase it. You can feel joy without scrambling to prolong it. You can be sad without being swallowed by the story of why. In relationships, this practice is transformative. A partner says something that stings, and your instinct is to counterattack. Pause. Name it. Hurt, not fury. Hurt invites vulnerability. Fury invites war. Where you feel distant from someone you care about and mistake it for disinterest. Naming it as longing changes the tone of your next words. The shift is small but profound. You speak from truth, not from the armor you built to hide it. Over time, this practice changes your relationship with yourself. You stop fearing certain emotions because you've proven you can sit with them. You stop overvaluing the rush of others because you know they, too, can be witnessed without obeying them. You become less volatile, not because you feel less, but because you've learned to let the tide rise and fall without letting it sweep you away. At night, when the day is done, try looking back at a single moment when an emotion rose and you named it. Remember how it felt to sit still, to resist the reflex to fix or fight. That moment was mastery in miniature, not control over the world, but over the way you meet it. And mastery, in the end, is not a grand transformation. It's 1,000 small acts of awareness, each one beginning with a name, a breath, and the choice to simply remain. The last time reminder, pick up something near you. A coffee cup, a book, a photograph, a piece of clothing. Hold in your hands and feel its weight. Notice its texture. And then, without ceremony, whisper to yourself, what if this is the last time? At first, the question feels theatrical, like something designed to stir a momentary spike of sentiment. But stay with it. Let land. What if this is the last time your fingers wrap around this familiar handle? The last time you feel the warmth of the drink seeping through the ceramic? The last time the smell rises toward you in this exact way? What if tomorrow you never touch this object again? Not because of some tragedy, but simply because life changes and what feels permanent quietly drifts away. The mind resists the thought. It says, of course there will be more. This is just a cup. This is just a book. This is just another ordinary moment. But that's the lie that robs us daily. The belief that the ordinary is endless. That the objects, the faces, the routines we love will always be there waiting for us. The last time reminder breaks that trance. It forces you to see the truth. Everything you hold is on loan. Every person you love, every place you stand, every small ritual you perform is temporary. This isn't meant to make you live in fear. It's meant to strip away the blindness of assumption. Gratitude sharpens when you see the edges of things. Think of the last time you saw someone without knowing it would be the last. A friend you lost touch with. A grandparent you thought you'd visit again. A colleague you expected to see Monday morning, only to never cross paths again. If you'd known, would you have lingered? Would you have looked longer? Would you have let gratitude flood the moment instead of rushing past it? When you hold something and whisper the question, you are rehearsing presence. You are teaching yourself to treat the moment as if it were rare, because it is. This works not only with objects, but with people, with places, with experiences. The last time you hear a certain laugh. The last time you walk down a street before it changes. The last time you hear your child's voice at this exact pitch before they grow. Life doesn't announce the last times. They slip by disguised as normal days. The chair you always sit in at a cafe is gone. The tree outside your window is cut down. The shop you pass every evening locks its door forever. One day you put down a mug without knowing it's the last time you'll drink from it. And so the last time reminder is a deliberate act of defiance against forgetfulness. You hold on with your attention, even if only for a moment, and you mark it in your mind. This isn't about clutching at everything in desperation. It's about seeing clearly so that you can release it without regret when the time comes. Gratitude is sharper when it's honest. When you admit that something might not last, you love it more fiercely while it's here. And the beauty is, this practice doesn't need a grand stage. You can do it in the middle of the most ordinary day. Sitting at your desk, you run your hand over the smoothness of the pen you've used for years and whisper the question. Standing in the kitchen, you feel the worn handle of the pot your mother gave you and ask it again. Holding your dog's paw, feeling the small pulse beneath the fur, you whisper and the moment expands. At first, this might feel heavy, but over time, it becomes a source of lightness. You no longer take as much for granted. You don't walk through your life as if it's a rehearsal. You live inside the performance, knowing the curtain could fall at any time. And instead of fearing that fall, you prepare for it, not by closing off, but by opening wide. The last time reminder is a simple ritual, but it changes the way your eyes work. It trains you to notice the shade of someone's hair in a certain light, the sound of your own footsteps in a hallway, the pattern and the grain of a wooden table you've sat at 100 times. It teaches you that everything, every object, every person, every moment is more precious than it pretends to be. So tonight, before you set something down, pause. Hold it a little longer. Whisper the question, even if no one hears. Let gratitude sharpen your sight until the moment becomes something you can feel in your bones. Then, when it passes, and it will pass, you will not mourn that you didn't see it. You will know you were there fully for the last time. The moment as it is, you wake up and feel the day already pulling you forward. The mind reaches for something, music, a phone screen, a plan, a distraction, anything to shape the moment into something better, brighter, more bearable. But today you resist that pull. You let the moment arrive exactly as it is. No softening, no escaping, no improvement. You meet it the way you'd meet a stranger, curious, but not trying to change them. It sounds small, almost trivial, but the habit of altering every moment is woven into us. We adjust lighting, tweak words, fill silences, add flavors, filter photos. We reach for something to make what's here into something else. The problem isn't that improvement is wrong. It's that we forget what untouched reality even feels like. We lose the ability to simply be with life as it is. So you start the drill. You sit and you witness. Maybe you're in a room with a faint hum from the refrigerator, a patch of light on the floor, and the faint smell of last night's coffee in the air. You don't pick up a book. You don't adjust the light. You don't think about how this could be better. You just let it stand as it is, ordinary, imperfect, whole. The mind will try to run. It will think about the next thing you should do. It will criticize the moment. Too quiet, too noisy, too still, too uncomfortable. And you will notice those thoughts without acting on them. This is not the same as zoning out. You are fully present, letting every texture, sound, and feeling be exactly what it is. There's a discipline here that feels strange at first. We are taught to make the best of things, which often means shaping them into something else. But sometimes the best of a thing is not in changing it. It's in recognizing that it doesn't need you to change it. The sky doesn't require your approval to be overcast. The breath in your chest doesn't need your commentary to keep going. In the middle of this drill, you might feel restless, even a little trapped. That's normal. That restlessness is the residue of always needing the next fix of stimulation or control. Let it surface. Watch it without feeding it. The urge to improve or escape is like an itch you decide not to scratch. At first, it gets louder. Then, slowly, it loses its power. This isn't passivity, it's clarity. When you stop trying to push or pull the moment, you see it clearly enough to respond with precision if action is needed. But until that need arises, you are simply here. You discover that the moment, even in its raw state, has a texture you've been missing. You might notice the rhythm of your own breath, the way sunlight changes over minutes, the way your thoughts settle when they aren't being fed. There will be moments in life where change is impossible. Waiting rooms, traffic jams, grief. If you've practiced meeting the moment as it is, you will not be crushed by those hours. You'll know how to sit with them without turning them into an enemy. You'll know that they will pass without your interference. The more you do this, the more you realize that many moments don't actually need your improvement. They just need your attention. And attention, without the pressure to change, becomes its own form of beauty. Even boredom becomes alive. Even discomfort becomes something you can hold without fear. So today, try it. Choose a small span of time, 5 minutes, 10, and let it be exactly what it is. No enhancement, no escape, just witness. The world won't become more perfect in that stillness, but your ability to live in it without resistance will grow. And that might be the quietest, most radical improvement of all. Shadow dialogue reflection, you sit in a dim room. No music, no distractions. Just the faint hum of the air and the steady weight of your own breathing. Across from you, an empty chair waits. You know who it's for. You've been avoiding this meeting for years. Then, without movement, without warning, the chair is no longer empty. A figure sits there, your darker self. It is you, but stripped of all politeness, all restraint. The features are sharper, the eyes deeper, the mouth curled into a half smile that doesn't mean kindness. It leans forward, elbows on knees, and speaks before you can. So, it says, you finally decided to face me. You nod, keeping your voice steady. I've been hearing you for a long time. I thought it was time we spoke. It chuckles low, the sound almost a growl. Spoke? You've been listening to me your whole life. I'm in every time you replay an insult at night. Every time you fantasize about what you should have said, what you should have done. I'm every sharp word you swallowed. Every chance you didn't take. I'm the one who remembers. You feel its words land like small stones in water. The ripples move through you. Then why hide? Why stay in the dark? It tilts its head. Because you like to pretend you're better than me. You like to wear your kindness like armor. But when you're hurt, who do you call? Not your patience. Not your hope. You call me. I'm the one who sharpens your tongue, who locks your heart, who says, never again. The truth in that burns. You think of moments when rage carried you through pain, when suspicion kept you from being hurt twice. You've kept me safe, you admit. I've kept you alive, it corrects. Without me, you'd still be trusting the wrong people, letting them take pieces of you until there was nothing left. I am your teeth in the dark. You take a breath, but you're also my prison. You don't just protect me from enemies. You keep me from living. You don't let me trust, even when it's safe. You don't let me forgive, even when I want to. For the first time, its smile fades. If I let you out, I lose my purpose. And if I lose my purpose, I vanish. Do you understand what that means for me? Yes, you say softly. It means you're afraid too. It looks away, the lines of its face flickering like smoke. I'm afraid you'll forget what I've done for you. I'm afraid you'll get hurt and curse my name for not stopping it. You lean forward. I won't forget. I need your memory, your caution, but I don't need your control. I want you here when I need you, not standing between me and the world all the time. It studies you for a long moment, and then slowly it leans back. The edges of its form begin to blur, the shadows that shaped it thinning like mist in sunlight. The eyes, once sharp, soften. The shoulders loosen. I'll stand down, it says almost in a whisper, but only because you're finally strong enough to walk without me holding the door closed. You watch as it dissolves. First the outline, then the weight in the air, then the chair is empty again. But you know it's not gone. It's just stepped back, deeper inside where it belongs. The room feels lighter. You feel lighter. Not because you destroyed a part of yourself, but because you finally looked it in the eye and made peace with it. You realize now that your darker self was never your enemy. It was your bodyguard, overzealous and overprotective, unable to trust that you could survive without its constant vigilance. And as you leave the room, you carry both the light and the shadow with you, balanced, acknowledged, no longer at war. Because dissolving the darkness wasn't about erasing it. It was about letting it rest, knowing you no longer needed to fight every battle in your name. Train for being forgotten. Imagine this. You wake up and a quiet truth waits for you in the air. An hour from now, the world will forget you. Not just the strangers you pass on the street, not just your coworkers or the cashier at the corner store, but everyone. Friends, family, the people who love you, the people who dislike you, all will lose every trace of you from their minds. Your name, your history, your moments together, gone, as though they never happened. You won't die. You'll still be here, but you will vanish from every narrative except your own. You will not be called, remembered, or even missed. And nothing you say or do in that hour will be carried forward in anyone's memory. At first, the thought is crushing. Our lives are built on the fragile scaffolding of being remembered, on the idea that what we do will be witnessed, carried, echoed in someone else's mind. We post, we perform, we share, we explain, all because we want proof that we existed. Remove that proof, and something inside begins to shake. Without the audience, without the trail of recognition, what would you do with your hour? Maybe you'd find yourself slowing down. Without the need to impress or document, your choices would change. You wouldn't reach for your phone to capture the light on the wall. It wouldn't matter. No one would see it. You wouldn't rehearse the clever thing you might say later. It would evaporate before anyone could hear it. The filters you use to measure worth would dissolve, and you'd be left with something bare. The question of what is worth doing for its own sake. Perhaps you'd walk outside and feel the wind against your skin, not because it's poetic or post-worthy, but because it's real and happening. You might hum to yourself, not caring that the tune is imperfect. You might write a sentence you will never show to anyone. Or you might finally do the thing you've been avoiding, because without the risk of judgment, there is nothing to lose. The truth is, much of what we do is shaped by the anticipation of being seen. We choose outfits for how they'll be perceived. We tell stories for the reaction they'll get. We offer kindness for the gratitude it might return. But strip all that away, and you find the core of action, its quiet, private pulse. If no one will remember your generosity, will you still give? If no one will recall your apology, will you still say the words? If no one will carry the image of your effort, Will you still do the work? This hour is not about erasing the importance of relationships or recognition. It's about testing the strength of your inner compass when all external magnets are gone. It's about discovering which acts are tethered to your own sense of what's right, beautiful, and necessary, and which are bound to the gaze of others. And something else happens in this hour. Your fear begins to loosen. You realize how much of it comes from wondering how you'll be remembered if you fail, if you falter, if you're less than perfect. But when memory itself is taken away, failure loses its sting. You are free to try, to stumble, to begin again, without the shadow of an audience. There's a strange tenderness in imagining this disappearance. It shifts your focus from legacy to presence. You stop trying to carve your initials into the future and start noticing the texture of the now. The way your hands feel around a warm mug. The way rain changes the sound of the air. The way your own breath moves through you. These things don't need to be remembered to be real. When the hour ends and the imagined forgetting lifts, the world will know you again. They will remember your name, your face, your place in their lives. But you'll have changed. You will know the taste of doing something entirely for its own life, without the oxygen of recognition. And that knowledge will follow you into the hours that do leave a trace. To train for being forgotten is to train for living in alignment with what matters to you, not what matters to your image. It's to find the part of you that moves even when no one is watching. And when you live from that place, the paradox emerges. The life that is most worth remembering is the one you were willing to live, even if it would vanish from everyone's mind. So, if the world would forget you in an hour, what would matter now? Not the proof, not the applause, only the moment itself, its weight, its warmth, and the quiet truth that being alive, right now, is enough. Resentment release ritual begins somewhere quiet, where you can hear your own breath. Take a pen and a sheet of paper, something simple, not glowing, not connected to a network. Write down the names. Do not censor. Do not soften. Let each one surface, even if your hand hesitates, even if the name feels like a wound reopening. These are the people you carry in the locked room of your mind. The ones whose presence arrives uninvited in moments that should belong only to you. This is the list of weight you've grown so used to that you no longer notice you're bending under it. When you are done, look at it, not as a roster of enemies, but as an inventory of unfinished stories. Resentment is unfinished business, a loop that replays because you never reached its ending. Some of these names may belong to people who hurt you without apology. Some to people who never knew the harm they caused. Some to people you once loved, whose absence feels like a betrayal. Each name is a thread knotted to your own life. This ritual is about loosening those knots, not for their sake, but for yours. Take the first name. Say it aloud. Not like a curse, not like a plea, but like identifying something in the distance. Then say, slowly, I release you. Feel the words in your mouth, the way they shape your breath. You are not saying, it was fine. You are not saying, you were right. You are saying, you no longer live rent-free in my mind. You no longer control the air in this room. Move to the next name. Repeat. Sometimes the release will feel hollow, as if nothing has changed. Sometimes it will feel like a tiny exhale you didn't know you were holding. Sometimes it will feel impossible, like prying your own hand open when it wants to clench. Do it anyway. The power is in the repetition, in telling your nervous system over and over, we are letting this go. You may notice resistance rising, the inner voice that says they don't deserve release. That voice is telling the truth, but the release is not for them. It is for the parts of yourself that have been keeping vigil by a closed door, waiting for something that will never arrive. It is for the energy you could be spending on building, creating, loving, instead of rehearsing the same old grievances. As you move through the list, the silence between names grows heavier. When the last one is spoken, sit in that silence. This is the emptiness left behind. It will feel strange at first, like a missing tooth your tongue keeps returning to, or like walking without the weight you've been unconsciously bracing against. Some will call it peace. Others will call it vulnerability. Both are true. In the days after, You may find the names returning to you, trying to reclaim their space. That is not failure. It is the mind's habit asking to be fed. Each time it happens, you can whisper the same words. I release you. No theatrics, no ceremony. Just a reminder that the eviction stands. The ritual does not erase history. The events happened. The harm may remain real and deep, but it rewrites your role in that history. No longer the one carrying the weight, no longer the one replaying the scene. The release is a door you close, not to lock them out, but to stop yourself from walking back into the same room. And in the emptiness left behind, something else will come. Space for new conversations that aren't anchored to old pain. Space for your own voice without the echo of theirs. Space for the day to unfold without the shadow of people who are no longer here. This emptiness is not a loss. It is the shape of your life when it is finally your own. The heavy stone carry. Slip the stone into your pocket in the quiet of the morning. Not a polished gem, not something beautiful, just a plain, solid weight that fits in your palm. Feel its cool surface before you put it away. As you walk out the door, you almost forget it's there. But then you shift in your seat, and it presses against your leg. You take a step, and you feel it move. All day, it follows you, silent and patient, asking nothing except to be carried. This is the heavy stone carry, discipline disguised as something ordinary. It is a choice to keep a physical reminder of endurance with you from dawn until sleep. The weight is not much. It won't strain your muscles, but it will whisper to you every time you notice it. Stay the course. Keep your footing. Bear what you've chosen to bear. The stone is a mirror of your commitments. Most of life's hardest disciplines don't arrive in sudden heroic bursts. They live in the quiet, unremarkable weight of daily choices. Waking up when the alarm sounds. Finishing what you started even when a spark has faded. Holding your tongue when it would be easier to lash out. No one applauds you for these things. They are invisible to others, but they build the architecture of your strength. The stone reminds you that you carry those invisible loads, too. Throughout the day, it will catch your attention in unexpected moments. Maybe during a meeting, when your patience is thin. You feel the stone against your thigh, and remember, endurance is not just about suffering through hardship. It's about holding steady in the small, quiet tests. Maybe as you're walking home, tired and tempted to cut corners on something you promised yourself you'd do. You feel the weight and remember, promises mean nothing without the carrying. There's a reason it's not light enough to forget completely. The weight is the point. Discipline is not a comfort. It's a burden you agree to bear. But here's the secret. Burdens carried with intention don't weaken you. They forge you. The stone is not there to make your day harder. It's there to remind you that you are capable of carrying more than you think if you do it one step at a time. In moments of temptation, the stone becomes a question. Will you put this down, or will you keep going? And because it's just a stone, small, manageable, you're reminded that most of the things you think you can't carry are actually possible. Not because they're easy, but because you've decided they matter enough to bear. By nightfall, the weight may feel familiar, almost comforting. You've carried it through conversations, decisions, moments of frustration, and flashes of doubt. You've carried it without letting it drop, without letting it be forgotten. That is the quiet victory the world won't see. When you finally take it out of your pocket before bed, hold it in your hand again. Feel how unchanged it is. The stone hasn't grown lighter. It hasn't softened, but you have changed. You've carried it without complaint, without breaking stride. That is the muscle discipline builds, not in your body, but in your will. And tomorrow, if you choose, you can put the stone back in your pocket and carry it again. Not because you must, but because you understand now that endurance isn't a single act. It's the repetition of choosing to bear the weight you've chosen. The stone is only a stand-in for everything you've committed to. Your goals, your principles, your promises to yourself. Carry it well, and you'll remember that you can carry them too. Non-reactivity rehearsal. Someone throws a sharp word your way. Maybe it's dressed as a joke. Maybe it's blunt and meant to cut. You hear it land, feel the first jolt in your chest or your gut, the heat that says, I should respond. But today you don't. You let it pass through the air, untouched. Your lips don't part. Your eyes don't narrow. Your face is a mask of calm, not from suppression, but from choice. This is the non-reactivity rehearsal. We're wired to react. An insult is a spark, and instinct tells us to answer it with flame, defend ourselves, fire back, or at least let our face betray the wound. But every reaction is a thread, and once you grab it, you're pulled into the other person's design. Non-reactivity is the refusal to be woven into that pattern. It's not weakness. It's not agreement. It's a deliberate pause that says, you don't get to pull my strings. The drill starts before the insult arrives. You prepare your body like an actor rehearsing a role, not to fake composure, but to make it natural. Relax the jaw, drop the shoulders, keep your breath low and steady. When tension rises, the body wants to tighten. You train it to open instead. That openness tells the mind, there's no emergency here. When a moment comes, when someone says, you've always been useless at this, or nice job, genius, your job is not to pretend you didn't hear. It's to notice the urge to react and choose not to. You let the words be sounds, not commands. You imagine them dissolving a few feet from your skin. You hold your face steady, not stiff, but still. Your mind will try to hold onto the insult, turning it over, replaying it. This is where the second half of the rehearsal begins. You practice not absorbing it. Picture the words as a package sent to the wrong address. You don't open it. You don't carry it inside. You just let it sit on the porch for the rain to take. You remind yourself, if it's not true, it can't define me. If it is true, I can change without their poison. There are times to respond to disrespect, when boundaries must be drawn, when silence could signal consent. But most insults are bait, not dialogue. They're an attempt to hook your attention, to drag you into a contest you don't need to enter. The rehearsal teaches you to spot the bait and walk past it without slowing down. Think of 3 scenarios. At work, a colleague mutters, "Of course you'd mess that up." You breathe once, glance at them without heat, and keep typing. Later, in private, you address the pattern calmly, without the adrenaline of the moment. In traffic, a driver shouts an insult through an open window. You don't give them the satisfaction of a glance. You focus on the road. With family, an old wound is poked at the dinner table. You lift your glass, sip water, and change the subject when the moment passes. Each time, you choose dignity over drama. This is not about letting people walk over you. It's about deciding when and how to stand. Reacting in the heat of insult usually gives them the field and your energy. Choosing your moment means you stay in control. The more you rehearse, the more it becomes reflex. Not the reflex to hit back, but the reflex to stay still. You'll notice insults losing their grip. They might still sting for a second, but they won't take root. You'll stop carrying them long after the speaker has forgotten them. You'll walk away lighter. Non-reactivity is not silence born of fear. It's silence born of strength. It's knowing you could answer, but you don't have to. It's the calm of someone who is not owned by every voice that tries to shake them. So the next time someone aims to provoke you, try it. Let the words pass through the air like smoke. Let your face remain calm, your body loose, your mind unmarked. They'll be left with their own echo, and you'll keep your power exactly where it belongs, in your hands. The Stoic social scroll test. You unlock your phone. The glow of the screen spills into your eyes like a doorway to 1,000 other lives. The feed begins to move beneath your thumb. Faces smiling at beaches you've never been to, bodies sculpted by hours you haven't spent, victories and announcements framed in perfect lighting. Normally, you feel the pull instantly, an invisible hook in the chest, tugging you toward comparison, judgment, craving. But not today. Today, you are here for the Stoic social scroll test. You are not here to react. You are here to watch. The first test comes quickly. Someone announces a new job, a milestone you've been chasing. Your reflex wants to tighten, envy like a flash of heat in your stomach. But you name it quietly to yourself. Envy. You see it rise, and instead of following it, you let it drift away like a cloud passing through the sky of your mind. The announcement remains, but the sting dissolves. You keep scrolling. Another image, a lavish vacation, waves curling over white sand. Your mind begins its whisper, I want that. I should have that. But you remember, one is just a spark, not a command. You hold it in your hand, watch it burn for a moment, then let it fade into ash. You do not have to chase every flicker of desire that appears in your thoughts. A post stirs anger now, someone's opinion sharp and dismissive, aimed at something you care about. Normally, you type a reply before the blood had even cooled in your veins. But today you pause. Anger is loud, but it is still just a guest passing through the house of your mind. You can let it slam the door on its way out without offering it a seat at your table. The feed keeps moving, successes, provocations, beauty, loss, tragedy. You watch each one appear, and you notice that your mind, left untrained, wants to lunge at them like a dog at every passing shadow. But you're training it to stay at your side. You're teaching it that observation is enough. This is not numbness. It is clarity. You still see the joy in others' wins, the beauty in their travels, the tragedy in their struggles. But you do not let each post drag you into the river of reaction. You're standing on the bank, watching the water pass. And slowly, something changes. The feed is no longer a trigger. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the patterns of your own mind. You begin to notice not just what you feel, but how often you feel it. How much envy, how much craving, how much anger you've been carrying without realizing. And with that awareness comes power. The power to choose which thoughts to keep and which to release. By the time you set the phone down, nothing in your external world has changed. No one knows you were conducting this test. But inside, you've proven something. The feed does not own you. Your attention is yours to direct. Your emotions are yours to release. And tomorrow, when you open that glowing door again, you will know how to walk through without losing yourself in the crowd. Invisible observer exercise. Picture the start of the hour. You're doing ordinary things, pouring coffee, answering messages, stepping out into the day. But in your mind, there's a new presence. It's not a friend, not a critic, not someone whose approval you chase. It is someone noble, someone whose life and character you admire so deeply that their opinion of you would matter more than anyone's. Not because you fear their judgment, but because you trust their integrity. They are not watching your actions only. They are watching your thoughts. Every flicker of irritation, every petty indulgence, every moment of generosity or restraint. They see it all. And somehow, their awareness doesn't feel invasive. It feels clarifying, as though a light has been turned on in the dim corners of your mind. At first, you notice small hesitations. You catch yourself thinking something dismissive about a stranger and stop, not to appear better, but because you realize you can be better. You're about to cut corners on a task and then ask yourself, would this version of me, the one they're watching, leave half done? The smallest decisions feel heavier, not because of pressure, but because the idea of wasting this hour on anything less than your best feels like an insult to the possibility of yourself. The noble observer doesn't reward you for being impressive. They value integrity over spectacle. They care more about whether you tell the truth in a quiet conversation than whether you win the room with charm. They would rather see you pause to listen than rush to be heard. You realize how much of your behavior is calibrated for the crowd. Quick wins, easy applause, surface-level approval. Under their gaze, those things lose their appeal. And something unexpected happens. You start to feel less scattered. When you imagine someone of wisdom and principle looking through your mind, you strip away the noise. You speak more deliberately, choose more carefully, think with more depth. It's not about being flawless. It's about aligning with a version of yourself you respect. You might still get annoyed, but you hold it without letting it leak into cruelty. You might still feel impatient, but you channel it into action instead of complaint. Even temptations change. That sarcastic text you were about to send loses its charm when you picture them reading the thought before you type it. The impulse to exaggerate your role in a story fades when you imagine them hearing the embellishment in your head. It's not fear that stops you. It's the desire to be seen, even by this imagined witness, as someone who doesn't need to twist the truth to have worth. As the hour passes, you notice the deeper shifts. You're more present, less distracted. You finish the task in front of you instead of chasing the next. You give more attention to the people around you. Not because they will remember it, but because the version of you in this hour knows that attention is a form of respect. You feel strangely lighter, as though living up to your own ideals is less exhausting than chasing the approval of many. When the hour ends, you imagine the noble observer leaving, not as a disappearance, but as a gentle release. You're alone with your thoughts again, but something lingers. The clarity, the steadiness, the quiet pride of having moved through time in a way that didn't leave you wishing you'd done better. And then you ask yourself, what changed? You didn't gain new abilities. You didn't suddenly have more hours in the day. You simply held your mind to a standard, not one imposed by fear or ego, but one shaped by the presence of someone you deeply admire. And the truth is, that presence was always yours to invoke. The noble observer doesn't need to be real enough to change you. If you can live well in the imagined light of their attention, you can live well without it. Because the point of the exercise isn't to be watched. It's to remember that you're already capable of being the person you'd want them to see.